Marshall Laverty.
Yes, Marshall.
Okay, it's 1:30. We're going to get started. Would you take your seats, please? We'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
He's there. But
Yes,
he's not
present.
Commissioner David,
present.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman isn't here yet. Vice Mayor Moore,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Attorney Tercivia, and Town Manager Laverty.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does anyone have any adjustments to the agenda as it's currently stated? If not, can I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
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 We're into presentations and proclamations, and we have a presentation from the Coastal Resilience Partnership.
Okay, we have Town Planner Allen.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I just thought I'd give you a brief introduction into this item. Let me take this off. As I indicated in the agenda memorandum, the town is part of the Coastal Resilience Partnership of Southeast Palm Beach County, which includes 7 municipalities and the county. I've gone ahead and listed those municipalities that participate. I'll read them out for those who may be watching. They include the city of Boca Raton, Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, Lake Worth Beach, Lantana, and Ocean Ridge. In 2019, the Town Commission approved an interlocal agreement between the partnership members to create a foundation for moving forward with a collaborative effort in regards to climate change, with a climate change vulnerability assessment. Collective Water Resources was chosen as a consultant to complete this climate change vulnerability assessment. And the goal of the vulnerability assessment was and is to explore threats and assess vulnerabilities and risks. Now, the results of this climate change vulnerability assessment will be used to implement adaptation strategies to develop a region resilient to the impacts of climate change. Now, on the town's webpage, under the quick links tab, we've had up for many months now a link to the Coastal Resilience Partnership webpage, which is part of the Palm Beach County website. This webpage provides a wealth of information pertaining to climate change. There's also various videos that are very informative on the topic. In addition, town staff has made several public outreach efforts to advise residents of the Climate Change Vulnerability Initiative. In October of 2020, staff placed on the town website a link to register for the November 19, 2020 Climate Change Vulnerability Assessment public webinar. Also in October of 2020, we did an email blast regarding participation in a climate change vulnerability survey. And then in December of 2020, we went ahead and placed on the town website a link to that November 20th public webinar. There was a recording of that webinar in case any residents weren't able to actually participate in the webinar. We went ahead and placed a recording of it back in December of 2020. Now, back on September 1st of 2020, Collective Water Resources, again, the consultant for this project, did present to the commission an overview of steps 1 and 2. There's a total of 5 steps. And now the consultant is back today to present, they'll do a summary, an overview of those first 2 steps, and also provide you some additional project steps, steps 3 and 4. I've called those out in your agenda memorandum. We have here today Ms. Liz Perez. She's a professional engineer from Collective Water Resources. And we also have Dr. Alec Bogdanov from Brizaga, which is a civil and coastal engineering firm. And I'll go ahead and give them the floor.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. I had the pleasure of serving as the outreach director for the project and also a climate scientist. And Liz from Collective Water was our project manager. I believe we have a presentation for you all. So this is an overview of the assessment. You all will receive a final technical document, a public-facing executive summary, which shortens the very dense document for public consumption as well. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the project and some of the results from it as well. So as you all already heard, this is a partnership of Southeast Palm Beach County. First of all, I want to applaud you working together as a region to address these challenges. As you all know, being a Barrier Island community, you rely on your neighbors for a lot of things, whether it's your favorite restaurant, going to the grocery store, to the mall. And days like this, when it's raining, you also realize that these problems also are not something one municipality can deal with on their own. Other agencies may control roadways that are important from a stormwater perspective. And so this really sets the foundation for collaborative work, thinking about how we address these problems moving forward. I'm just going to ask you to move it to next because the clicker's not letting me do it. So before I go into details, I want to explain what vulnerability and risk are. So the way I like to think about vulnerability is how sensitive is an asset to flooding? The example I like to give is a park that is next to a fire station. And while those two may experience the same amount of flooding, if a park has a few inches of water in it, it's not really a big deal. The water will recede, probably won't damage the park, but a fire station with several inches of water is a problem. It's a life safety issue. It's an operational issue. And so they have, even though they may have the same exposure to a hazard, they have different vulnerabilities. And it's really important to consider vulnerability and risk and not just whether an asset is exposed to flooding. Because basically what you're saying is it might happen some point if you just look at exposure, but we want to understand not just how, if it's going to happen, but if it does, what are the consequences and how often might it occur? And that's what risk really looks at. Risk looks at what is the likelihood of something happening. And then if it does happen, what are the consequences associated with it, right? So if you have 2 inches of flooding in a fire station, you still may be able to get the fire trucks out. But if you have several feet of flooding, you're not going to be able to operate that station. And so you have to look at these together. And so we're going to talk about combined vulnerability and risk scores. We actually looked on an asset by asset basis, every asset in Southeast Palm Beach County using these metrics across 12 climate threats. Next slide, please. So as you were already told, there were multiple steps to this. So the first thing we did was we explored the climate threats. We worked with the CRP, with the staff, to narrow this down to 12 climate threats. We assembled data across all of the regional assets. We assessed vulnerabilities and risks on an asset level. Then we looked at adaptation strategy. So we didn't just say this asset is vulnerable. We actually, community by community and as a micro region, said, what are the steps that we can take to start addressing these challenges? And lastly, reporting, which we're doing today. And you all received a tool as part of this, which will help from a planning perspective. Next slide. So here are the 12 threats that we looked at. There are a lot of climate threats. We narrowed it down to these. The first 2 are colored by meteorological events, high wind and rainfall-induced flooding. Aptly today, we will talk about rainfall-induced flooding, but we also have some outside. Harmful algal blooms, pest and disease outbreaks, which are health-related. Extreme heat, drought, and wildfire, which are related to heat. And the remaining are flood and water-related. Shoreline recession, tidal flooding, storm surge, groundwater inundation, and saltwater intrusion. Next slide. It's important to level set with the sea level rise projections we're using. So we use the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact, of which Palm Beach County is one of the 4 counties it covers. And so for 2040, we looked at both the high end and low end of the expectations. So from today, That's 5 inches and 13 inches of sea level rise from today. And then looking out into 2070, we looked at middle ground, which was 33 inches of sea level rise. And as you all can imagine, being a barrier island community, with all of the communities in Southeast Palm Beach County being relatively low lying near the coast, 33 inches does create immense challenges moving forward, but these are challenges that we can plan for and begin to overcome. Next slide. We looked at a range of assets, but we categorized them into critical facilities, water infrastructure, transportation and mobility, natural resources, economic factors, people and socioeconomics, and property. So we not only looked at the assets, but we also looked at who they serve and whether those communities are traditionally underserved communities, whether they're going to have the capacity to adapt themselves. Resilience is more than just building strong buildings. It's about building a sense of place and capacity within people to overcome challenges. Next slide. And as part of this, we did public outreach and engagement to educate the public about this topic and also get their input. And so as was noted, we did 2 public workshops, 6 staff workshops, and we did a micro-regional survey that had almost 1,000 people respond to it. The first, and they ranked the how they felt the threats would have the biggest negative impact. Probably not surprisingly to this community, number 1 was tidal flooding. This is the most obvious sign of climate change for this community. The second was actually shoreline recession. So looking at the beaches and what's going to happen to them over time. And then the third was extreme heat. And so this was very interesting to us. We'll talk about in a moment, but actually from a risk standpoint, rainfall-induced flooding has the highest risk for the most of the population in the region and wasn't considered one of the top 3. I think some of that is we just grow accustomed to dealing with rainstorms. And I don't know that there's a general understanding of how climate change will impact rainfall and our stormwater systems. So it's an area for future that we can use to educate the community. Next slide. So here's a region-wide community flood vulnerability overview. And so this looks at rainfall-induced flooding, storm surge, and tidal flooding in current conditions. And so based off this, there are 342 properties in the region that have a medium to high vulnerability and risk score associated with tidal flooding. That's about less than 1% of the properties. But what you can see from this is current risk, 42% of the residential properties are at risk in the 100-year storm. And so this is what I mentioned a moment ago, that actually rainfall-induced flooding is one of the biggest threats currently, but it's not necessarily perceived by the public as such. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tidal flooding. I don't need to go into too much detail about what this is, but as you all have lived it, but as sea levels rise, so do our tides. We're going to see salt water in places that used to be dry, and this occurs during the highest high tides of the year right now. But as time goes on, we're going to see them more often. We're starting to see them in the springtime now as well. And eventually they're gonna end up being normal tides instead of king tides. And so we looked at this from a sea level rise perspective, but also from an aging infrastructure perspective. Next slide. So this is a regional assessment. Looking from a regional standpoint, the point I'd like to really drive home here is that if you look at 2020 plus 33 inches of sea level rise, 3,854 assets will have a high combined medium or high vulnerability and risk score. That only accounts for 3.4% of the residential properties in the region. However, if you look at it from a value perspective, it's $12.1 billion or 31.5% of the region's asset value. Now, if we're talking about the fiscal impacts to a community where the government operations are based on property tax, this is really important to understand. Not just thinking about things in terms of the number of assets exposed, but what this means is a fiscal impact to the community. Because although it's only 3% of the properties, that's 31% of the value of property for a budgeting standpoint. And next slide, we're gonna look at this from a Highland Beach perspective. I spoke too soon. this is one of the things I wanted, before we get into the details, is we not just looked at assets, we also looked at roadways. So you can't just say, is an asset exposed, but can you get to it? What does that mean from a life safety perspective? What does that mean from a police, firemen, paramedics responding? So this is an example from your neighbors going from Boynton Beach to Ocean Ridge. And this was just a really great example of how, although on each side they're dealing with tidal flooding, for Ocean Ridge, the tidal flooding in Boynton Beach is really important. This is their primary access to get to the mainland. This is how fire and police will respond to the community. And so making sure that there is access to the community for emergency services is really important. And this is something that was considered in depth as part of the study as well. Next slide. So this was the specific example I wanted to provide with you all. Now you noticed before we talked that it was in 20 plus 33 inches, it was about 30% of the region's value at risk. For you all, it's 65%. It equates to $1.64 billion. So you actually have not only do you have a significant amount of your assets at risk, you actually are a sizable portion for your size of the region's risk as well. And so looking at roadways, which is the bottom table here, you'll notice that if you look at tidal flooding with 33 inches of sea level rise, 5 miles of your major roads are inaccessible, 83%, 19 miles of your minor roads, which is 100%, and there are 460 inaccessible properties. This was what I noted, which is 93% of your properties. Now going to just 5 inches of sea level rise versus today, you go from 4 to 22%, and looking at the higher end of 2040, that goes to 41%. And so thinking about adaptation in terms of roadways and raising roadways and properties over time, it's a challenge. We know that, but starting the conversation from a planning perspective is really important, especially when such a sizable portion of the community is at risk. Next slide. And you all not only have high risk due to tidal flooding, but also to rainfall induced flooding as well. And so on the next slide, you'll see a summary of this. So ultimately this looks at the 100-year storm. If you notice from a roadway perspective, throughout time, 100% of the roadways are inaccessible under the 100-year storm condition. So this is important from a planning and life safety issue, also explains why evacuations should be taken seriously when storms are threatening. But ultimately over time, the sea level rise, while it does change a little bit, it doesn't change a significant amount of the properties that are at risk from the 100-year flood. So you guys are already fairly vulnerable to a rainfall event, a 100-year storm event, which may also include some surge. And that will continue over time. So as a community, what you plan for today and the changes you make today, the good news is it will help for the long term. Yes, sir.
Would you define a 100-year storm?
Certainly, of course. Apologies about that. So this is a storm that has a 1% chance of occurring every year. And so we like to call it the 100-year storm. That's just the way it's been defined, but it has a 1% chance every year. So what that means over the lifetime of a mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, a 100-year storm over 30 years has a 26% chance of occurring.
And how much rainfall, how much wind, what is a 100-year storm?
16 inches from our hydrology.
And 16 inches over how many
24
days?
hours.
Oh, in 24 hours.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct. It's distributed. That storm event is just a standard storm event that hydrologists and water resources engineers run. It's also similar to the way that our FEMA maps are developed. So it's sort of a standard in the industry.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Next slide. So we didn't want to just give you all assets that were vulnerable and at risk. We wanted to think about adaptation strategies and moving forward. And so we broke adaptation strategies into 6 different types. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail, but you do have an executive summary that you can be provided shortly that does have all of these explained in detail. One of the things I'll note is we has infrastructure. So this is kind of the traditional adaptation folks think about, adapting individual pieces of infrastructure, but there are a lot of parts of adaptation. So we talked about land use, planning, capacity building, public outreach, and also funding and financing, which is my favorite topic. So I'm going to make sure I leave you all with funding and financing as well. If you want to go to the next slide, just to give an overview of the top findings and some select municipal strategies. So even with few overall assets, proportionally, Highland Beach has very high vulnerability to storm surge, especially for residential properties and road accessibility. I don't believe this comes as a surprise to this community. Residential properties and roads have some vulnerability to current tidal flooding, but this can increase greatly with most of these assets being highly vulnerable to the 2070, so that we talked about 33 inches of sea level rise. And residential vulnerability to high winds is also about twice that to the region as a whole. We didn't talk about high winds, but ultimately this looked at the age of structures. And so as a community that has some older structures, you guys also have structures that are vulnerable to high wind as well. And so some select municipal strategies to just briefly discuss. So conduct an annual review of sea level rise and climate change strategy before the capital budgeting process initiates. So ultimately, where are places that the budget needs to be thought about in terms of climate change? The way we like to talk about resilience is build it into everything. I talk a lot, I'm an oceanographer. I always tell folks, I don't care how big the hole in the boat is, there's still a hole in the boat. We want to make sure that this is built into all parts of community operation. Create and invest in strategic pre-disaster plans.
Excuse me, back up.
Yes, sir.
Invest in what?
So there might be, so one of the, I think, challenges with resilience is people think a lot that resilience is new money. We have to bring in lots of dollars, but really what it means is making small changes to existing capital plans. So you're thinking about building a new community center, or there's a new park going down the road. How do you build resilience into that park? Can that park also potentially hold stormwater and reduce flooding?
No, we don't have parks and we don't have community centers.
It's
What can we invest in? Be specific, please.
So I'll jump in.
Sure.
Case in point, you will see in next year or in your budget capital plans lifting of the lift station. So we're raising those lift stations substantially to protect the wet well systems and things of that nature.
Right.
So, yeah.
But what else? I mean, we don't have beachfront property. We don't own any of that. We don't own any property on the intercoastal, which is our biggest potential hazard.
We do, the library.
Yeah, we have a little bit, very little bit, which obviously we would invest in. But virtually all, not 100%, 90+% of waterfront is privately owned here.
And that gets to, while this, one of the strategies is to think about this in terms of your capital improvements, it's also policy and planning. So as folks replace seawalls, does the community need to think about a seawall ordinance?
We've taken care of that already.
Then,
But I want to know what we can invest in. I mean, certainly education, we can definitely invest in educating our owners, 100% there. But I'm looking for what else we can do. We're believers or we wouldn't be members. Okay. And maybe that's coming up. Maybe I'm interrupting you.
yeah, if I'll go through it and we can have more of a conversation, because I think this is really important. I think one of the challenges we talked about, especially in communities for you all, for folks like Ocean Ridge as well, a lot of your destiny is commingled with that of agencies like the Florida Department of Transportation. And so while you may not necessarily have to there's not a lot of investment from a municipal asset standpoint, there might be a lot of investment in your time in working with agencies like FDOT to make sure that they come in here and take care of their roads and their right of way. And so for different communities, the strategies look a little different. And one of the things is this is a regional study, so we didn't get into detail and say this asset should be adapted in this way, but that's really the next step.
We want to come out of this with a very specific plan with action steps and timetables.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Understood. So educate homeowners on rights of way issues and interconnect with adaptation. So we talked about this. This is an opportunity to educate the community. Promote town amenities like the library as hubs for climate change education. So again, I talked about that resilience is more than just building strong buildings, investing in assets, but investing in people and taking the time to really help them understand why they need to make the changes in the way they, take care of their swale, or encourage folks, if they have an opportunity, to use pervious pavers to do so. And also begin taking the key findings of this study to really prepare for the landmark Always Ready resilience law. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about funding and financing for a moment. There's a lot of money that's going to be coming down from the state and federal government. The state put $600 million towards resilience this year. I believe that applications should open in the next couple weeks, and they have to put but the $100 million plan every year, and then there's additional money as well. So this is an important step for the community to take to start funding things like lift stations and get that money back to this community, which does give a lot back to the state and federal government. Also, we know that communities that act sooner are going to have more tax revenue in the future. If you spend money now and property value is preserved, you'll have money in the future. But if you wait too long, the challenges may decrease property value and decrease your tax rolls. And there may be a point at which you can't even invest enough of your money to really fix the flooding issues. And so again, for places like this, we know that the challenges are multifaceted. That's one of the reasons why we applaud the fact that you're working as a region, talking to agencies and other folks as multiple municipalities together will help the conversation. Bond rating agencies are also looking at climate risk. They're looking at individual communities and saying, are you acting? And that's affecting their bond rating score. And also, while not necessarily as much in this community, but public-private partnerships and private financing is looking at what communities are doing as well. And so as you think about long-term investment in the community, this is an important part of the conversation as well. So thank you all for having us today. We're excited to share this with you all, and we'll take any questions and happy to have a conversation.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? We'll just open it up. Anybody has any, just kind of jump in. John, got anything?
Well, I do have several. One is, can I go back to the map of the area? And I noticed that there's a lot of white areas. Who owns the white areas? If you
Certainly. So the white areas in particular are neighboring communities that are serviced by utility service areas of the participating entities. So an example I can give is, that one of your barrier island neighbors is not a member of the Coastal Resilience Partnership, but they do receive services, utility services from one of the neighboring communities. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at that, since one of the participating entities owns and operates infrastructure in another community. Does that make sense? So
actually, I'm confused, but right below Lantana is a large white area. What is that area? Is it a town or no? Yeah,
Santana is the purple area.
that's certainly bigger than Highland Beach.
It might be Manalapan.
Briny Breeze is
And then Manalapan is there, and
As
then
well.
South Palm
Yeah.
chose not
Okay.
to participate along with Gulfstream.
Okay, all right. So, and they're not just part of this, they're not part of the partnership, so I get it.
correct.
So when I look at the threats on that one slide where you detail all the different threats, I mean, honestly, without having seen this, and somebody, if they ask me, well, what do you think the top threats are? I mean, frankly, I would have said, based upon what I've heard in the past, number one would be hurricanes. The idea of a hurricane coming in from the east could devastate us. We were close to that recently when all of a sudden it took a right-hand turn for incredible circumstances and went north and missed us only by a few miles. So hurricanes would have been one. I guess that's high wind. That's also flooding. That could be a 100-year deal. So hurricanes. Right behind that is the shoreline protection, because if we have a breach in the barrier, we're in deep trouble. And then the third one would be on the intercoastal side, intercoastal flooding. That seems to be a more continuous problem. The other two are like major events that may or may not happen, but it seems like we have a continuous problem with the intercoastal water levels rising, and however that might affect groundwater intrusion, saltwater. So those would be my top three. And yet I come back to the mayor's comments, which is really where the confusion is for me. Our town really doesn't, it's so private, it doesn't own anything except for the town property at the library and the town hall that does have some intercoastal waterfront. But aside from that, we have to rely on encouraging owners to do something. And maybe we shouldn't rely on them doing it. Maybe we do have to take a more forceful hand at it. But it would seem to me the first priority is the intercoastal seawall has to be improved and higher. And then on the ocean side, the only thing that we can do is somehow protect the boroughs and our sand, which I think is a continuing threat. Both outside of our domain, you could say, and you can argue it's not our sand and that sort of thing. And you got different levels of authorities that we have to deal with. But those would be the ones that would come into my thinking immediately. And the most severe case is if we have a breach in the island, the barrier of Highland Beach, it's not just that we have a breach and homeowners will lose property, and that we are going to lose a lot of tax revenue. And so we're going to go into a big bind at that point. We're in trouble. So I think that's the area of, coastal resilience planning that seems to be something that we could then, again, supporting what the mayor is saying, give me some specifics, dollars, actions, timeframes that make sense for us, rather than, honestly, a lot of rhetoric. That sounds good, makes nice for a presentation, but we don't get real action out of it that delivers results. Anyways, so that was my perspective as this was being played out. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, do you have any recommendations as to how high seawalls should be raised at this point, or how high buildings should be off the ground? Because I know that we have increased the levels or minimal levels in the past, but are we at sufficient points? Should we make them higher?
I think it's maybe best to talk to what some of your neighbors are doing. So specifically looking to the south in Broward County, requiring 4.5 and 5.5 foot NAVD seawalls. So I'm happy to share the specifics of the county actually passed a land use amendment. They have the authority to kind of force the cities into a seawall ordinance. Miami also just recently passed a seawall ordinance that from a height perspective was one of the more aggressive. And so, folks are looking at between 4 and 8 feet, depending on the flood risk. One of the things you need to look at in detail is what are you trying to protect against and what part of the community as well.
All right, well, are they just enforcing that when somebody does repairs or puts in a new seawall, or are they requiring people to do it whether their seawall is in good shape or not?
Both.
And also, I know the building I live in, our seawall is pretty much level with the lawn in the back. If we raise that 5 feet, will that protect us? I mean, I guess water could come over it, but would that be enough of a protection?
So the first thing I'll say is, so some communities are mandating seawalls being raised by a date certain. So by 2045, you're going to be up to this height. There's also other triggers. So if you substantially improve the wall, spend 50% of the cost, you have to bring it up to current standards. The last one is if you flood your neighbors or a neighboring right of way, you also have to bring it up to code. So those are 3 kind of mechanism folks are using right now in terms of seawalls. I will say you have hit the nail on the head for one of the biggest challenges here is that we have porous limestone rock. And so this is more than just building higher walls. the water's going to come up through the ground eventually, depending on groundwater levels, especially in a barrier island community where the groundwater is probably fairly close to sea level. That creates significant challenges from adaptation. And I'll pass it to Liz to say a little bit more as a,
I mean, I know at least once recently where there was no storm, there wasn't anything, and yet on the east side of A1A, there was flooding because it was water coming under the homes from the ocean, in essence, and coming up onto the road. What do we do about that?
Sure. So that is occurring here and in some of the neighboring communities that are members of the CRP. One of the major regional recommendations is to start interfacing with regional agencies that have the capacity to analyze and help here, as they've done in, for example, Broward County. For example, Palm Beach County does not have a regional groundwater model. So sort of the first step in resilience is to understand your risk. I think we sort of understand our risk by observation to start. And so what this study has now armed you with is more detailed numeric information on your risk. So for example, we're recommending, we do have a lot of detailed flood maps that will be going to your staff. So they'll be able to see exactly what's going to potentially happen in 2040 and 2070. So as you're considering, for example, how high to emphasize putting these lift stations or seawalls, your staff will have that data. That's very helpful. We've never had that in Palm Beach County before. But with regards to groundwater inundation, it does take years to analyze that. Our neighbors in Broward County and Miami-Dade are dealing with that now. One of the major recommendations is that we start working on that, because that is a tough sort of multi-year process to analyze how fast, how high, where is it happening, and then finally, what do we do? And I would not recommend that each community do that on your own. Groundwater modeling needs to be conducted at a regional scale. So the good news is that the South Florida Water Management District and the Lake Worth Drainage District participated in this study. They sat in the meetings, they heard the staff talk about these issues, their observations, they saw the maps, they will see the final report, and the CRP, as one of their regional strategies, is going to continue a dialogue with all of those agencies, and hopefully as well the Florida Department of Transportation, because capacity building and working together will be a huge part of this. But groundwater inundation, unfortunately, given all of the other water issues we have in Palm Beach County, has not been studied as widely. And that's something as a county we've really got to jump on.
All right. All of this information and all of this data is wonderful. But what do you do? I mean, I'm looking for a practical solution.
Yes.
The data is great, but if you don't tell me what to do with it,
Yes,
then it's useless.
yes. So there are pages of regional strategies that appear in the report. And then we also prepared strategies, funding advice, information on timelines for each jurisdiction as best we could. We worked hand in hand with your staff to prepare that. We looked at your individual risks from different threats. There was a good point made about shoreline recession. For example, you do have significant risk of shoreline recession. As part of this study, coastal engineers looked at all of your shoreline and created a shoreline index. So not only do we know that it's vulnerable, we know how vulnerable for each mile of your shoreline now. And that information is going to your staff and will be readily available to you as you start to prioritize. Now, with that said, we are recommending a number of strategies. We are recommending different funding sources, timelines, advice for tapping into that. But as we said, this is part of a journey. So in terms of individual engineered strategies, did we do that? No, not as part of this. But what we're doing is we're launching priorities for those studies. So you sort of know where to look first, and then you can provide those resources, for example, to the engineers that will work on those projects.
do you believe that there will be any money available for, because we are a privately owned town.
Yes.
We don't have community property as such. Can homeowners come into this well of money to, if they want to help shore up things and help protect for the future? Because they're protecting the value of their homes, but they're also at the same time then protecting the value of their neighbors' homes.
So I think this is a really important community conversation. A lot of communities are having this exact discussion. How do we help private individuals start thinking about adaptation? For a lot of folks, they may have the money to do it, and communities need to say, well, are there ways that we as a municipal government can help folks? Are we thinking about loan programs? And then you might be able to talk to the entities funding them and say, hey, if I want to create a loan program, it might look like an assessment for an individual property. Can we do that with these dollars? These are very new dollars, so a lot of the rules and regulation haven't been written yet. And I would highly suggest interfacing with FDEP as they start thinking about this and say, we want to make sure that we can use this for, seawall financing or other measures. I would also say that that's one of the biggest things we need to figure out as a state. How are we going to help individual homeowners finance these challenges? There are existing mechanisms that some folks politically don't like, but we need to find them. This isn't just a Highland Beach problem. This is a statewide problem. And I agree with you. Like, I wish I could come up here and say, here's the answer. Just like there's no easy answer from a groundwater perspective, you have to raise structures. These are really difficult topics. This assessment is supposed to be a planning tool to help you start these conversations here and now with your staff, with the community, to start figuring out how you want to move forward as a town.
I know in a lot of communities up north, beach communities, homes have to be built on stilts. And even built on stilts, if you go out to parts of Southampton and you go after a normal winter, no storms, no anything, you're going to find a third of the staircases leading up into those homes are gone. And that's an every year occurrence. So we can't put a lot of these houses on stilts. They have beach houses. We have, minor mansions. And concrete doesn't do real well on a stilt.
And it's going to be a long-term process. As we start building today, we need to think about tomorrow. And there may be structures that were previously built that at some point need to be changed in significant ways. And this is an incredibly tough problem, especially for communities like yours. And I think that the fact that you're having this conversation today, as opposed to 10 or 15 years from now, when the problem's a lot worse, says a lot about your willingness to address these head on.
Okay, we got to keep moving. Okay,
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Peggy?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes. Interestingly enough, I was at last weekend at the Florida League of Cities Committee for Transportation and Intergovernmental Relations. And a topic was discussed for many areas that we've touched on today. And this exact study was named by all people throughout the state. We're talking several hundred persons in attendance. This is being watched throughout the state as a prime example of what to do in the future with flooding and all these infrastructure problems, including roadways, properties. So this was discussed widely in Orlando last weekend with great anticipation of hopefully results for the rest of the state to copy. So on top of that, I'd like to follow up on Evelyn's, Commissioner David's comments. Could you just give us 3 to 5 exact examples of what we should be doing? I'm presuming they would be, besides knocking down all the homes and rebuilding on stilts, they would be drainage, would be a topic for drainage for all roadways, and raising of seawalls, which we discussed previously here at the commission and we're looking at with codes and working with agencies. We're aware of the grants. We're looking into those right now. But give us some more, if you could, exact examples, like 1 through 5.
Sure. So one, I'll give you on seawalls, and you may decide that as a community, you want to create a special taxing district for seawalls, and as a community, take care of those. There are communities that have done that. That's a conversation folks are having. I'm not saying it is or isn't the right solution, but it's something tangible you can discuss today. You can say, do we want to basically take over every seawall in the community and let this now be a government responsibility? That it's a choice you have to make, and it's an alternative to potentially.
We can't do that.
We can't, no.
They're privately
That's-
owned,
Right.
so scrap that.
That's gonna
Can't
be-
do it.
That's.
Well, other communities have.
We won't do it.
That if you won't do it, then that's,
We're not,
That's okay.
we're not taking over private property.
you talked about drainage, making sure that you have backflow preventers on any outfalls, making sure that you have sufficient capacity in your stormwater system. So these are tangible things. Putting in specific freeboard standards now for new construction. What does that look like now? Well, what does that look like in the future? Let's put in a new standard. As you said, because you don't own a lot of infrastructure, a lot of your tools are going to be policy related tools. You have an incredible town planner who can help think through what are all of the, I would do a code review. That's the first thing I would do. I'd say, how can we need to do an entire assessment of our code from start to finish? Where are places that we can improve this code now to take into account the impacts of climate change? And I can tell you, I don't know a single community that has done that from start to finish. They've thought about it. They've done small changes, but not a significant. So these are the types of examples. I mean, and one thing I will say is I'm happy to sit down and come up with more tangible examples specifically for you all, put them in writing and pass them along. I know that's what you want, and I'm happy to do that.
We appreciate the offer. We're
One
going to
more
take you up
question,
on
if
it
I
too.
could.
Thank you.
Mayor, one more question.
Go.
Yes, sir. He brought up early in the conversation here that raising the roads might be a possibility. But frankly, if we raised our roads, then that would flood our homes because.
Yeah,
So-
you get unintended consequences
sir.
from that.
So perhaps that might be useful in other communities. But if you see here, I already just drove through flooded A1A to get here in an old car. So I apologize for my lateness. However, would that not be not a useful tool for us?
So I'm a stormwater engineer and a water resources engineer. So I actually loved that I was driving here in the rain and I was redesigning as I drove. So I will say you do have unused capacity here along your roads, but there would take some re-education and sort of a community dialogue about this because some of your flowways are obstructed. So there's a conversation that needs to occur. And you're smart when you talk about raising roads to talk about the overall impacts and not just blindly raising roads, right? Some of the earlier communities did that and it backfired. You don't want to affect property values or flood insurance or any of those good things. But I do feel like having driven through and just studying your floodplains, you do have some capacity. It might not get you all the way to 2070, but with some modifications working with FDOT, I do think you have additional capacity alongside your roads.
If you could clarify additional capacity into
Sure.
maybe plainer
More
language for people
storage.
watching.
More storage.
So are you
can-
looking at better swales or better outfall pipes?
all of it? Definitely you could increase the size of the swales, but of course, when you do that and do some repairs, that's always difficult. There's also just the issue of upsizing your outfalls because you do have to treat it before it outfalls. I do feel like there's probably a little bit of storage there, but there's a conversation obviously with FDOT that would need to occur. And we've discussed this, I think, with every community that we've presented to. All of them want to speak with FDOT about roadways because it's our major arteries, right? So we do need to have that conversation. FDOT has started some work in terms of drainage and upsizing for climate change, but we need to provide them with the results of this study and have a dialogue with their drainage engineers and then work with the water management district so that we can create solutions that are sustainable. We also just can't pump it out into the intracoastal waterway and ruin our quality of life.
No.
So I really do think there are solutions, but the current engineering cookbooks don't get us there. So we need to rewrite the cookbooks
Are
and
you
work
saying-
with these agencies to do so.
Sorry, are you saying that FDOT is behind the times a little in this, where they're just busy with other projects?
I'll
Just wondering your opinion
sure.
on their outlook, as if this is like a lower priority for them because they're building 3 new tollways in West Florida.
So I'll say this, I'm an engineer. And so engineers, I think through the years, I've been doing engineering for almost 25 years. We were brought up to use the cookbooks and be faithful to the cookbooks. And our cookbooks are no longer predictive of what's happening. So when we design, we're not designing to the correct conditions anymore. So as a profession, we've got to get a lot better faster, all of us. So I would say, of course, that includes FDOT, but that includes all of us. I still use those same cookbooks because that's all that's required of me. So it takes great folks like yourselves to talk to FDOT and the Water Management District and all of FDEP about rewriting those cookbooks. And some of the early work has started, but it's just started. I know the Water Management District, for example, is starting to look at modifying our rainfall curves because the hydrology we're using is 30 years old. And it's not even looking forward. We've got to get those curves updated, so at least we're working with modern storm events. So it's really, I think, multi-pronged, but I'll just say all engineers need to do better.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It gives us an idea of where we're getting pushed back, and perhaps other agencies need to.
Yeah,
kind of step
everybody
in.
is.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Natasha.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused on the status of this study. Is it complete? Is it considered complete?
It's very close to complete. Part of the final step was presenting to each community. That will be finished when we present to the county in a week? Next week. The final report is being rolled out to staff, and then an ADA compatible version is also coming out. There is currently an ADA compatible executive summary that's being reviewed. And so pretty much all of it is being rolled out this month, and the study will be final. And then the CRP will move forward with implementing the study and educating about the study and continuing the dialogue.
So when you say rolling out to staff, like you rolled it out to Town of Highland Beach staff?
Staff has seen portions of the report. They saw a draft. And then we obviously developed the strategies with staff, particularly those for Highland Beach. And then all of the study results are being summarized in the report, and that will be provided this week.
And is it your experience that staff knows what to do with what you've presented them with? Is it used, is it? like, how
Many of them,
usable?
yes. There's a tremendous group of staff that worked on this. The other thing is that this isn't just sort of a dusty study that we're providing. We're providing a lot of tools and information. So for example, we're providing the spreadsheets that we use to rank your assets. So staff will be able to see exactly where each asset ranked. We've provided a number of maps relating to infrastructure. And then we also are working to provide a tool, an interactive web-based tool that staff can use to view a lot of the study results spatially. It's a very powerful tool. It's named Adapt. It basically lets you interact with the maps from the study.
So is this the type of thing where we need to hire our own consultant to help us work through your results to put?
No, I think we just
Specific.
agreed that we're willing to take this a step further for Highland Beach. If that's something you would like us to do, we'll work to help you get to that next step. If you're interested, we'll take it that additional step. For you.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, it sounds like to me also that the solution for Highland, or some of the major steps for Highland Beach, might be very similar to what the steps are for Boca or Delray or some of the other neighboring communities. I mean, it just seems like to me
Absolutely.
that we kind of all need to work together and figure out what it is that we need to do, because whatever standards we put in place here in Highland Beach, I imagine would need to be very similar in Boca or Delray or Ocean Ridge or whatever. So it seems like a continuation of the coastal resilient, this partnership is a key piece to moving forward. Is that also what
It really
you're
is.
thinking? Okay.
When we looked at the strategies, that just naturally came to the top because that is a group that works across all of the threats, you know, just in terms of all of the ways we ranked it. This partnership is extremely powerful. And I know when we were developing strategies, for example, you know, I'll just say Boca chimed in on different groups. You know, I would see the themes reemerge and we were able to pull from other communities. Or for example, Boynton Beach could say, we tried that, didn't work well, here's why. So yes, it's extremely powerful. And I think it will be useful for years to come.
And then you had mentioned, like, are Miami-Dade and Broward, have they implemented some things that we can study, like make some lessons learned?
Especially from a county perspective, Broward County has a future conditions groundwater map. So it's a publicly available map. And actually you have to think about it when you're thinking about drainage. You actually have to look at the future conditions groundwater, which looks 50 years out. In addition, they actually have a 100-year community flood map that takes into account sea level rise. So they're not just looking at FEMA's maps. They're saying we're going to go above and beyond that. And we're going to take into account our own maps that look at future flooding conditions. So actually their development standards are even greater than what FEMA requires. And what's pretty neat about it is when FEMA came out with their new maps, because Broward County was already ahead, a lot of folks built to a higher standard weren't below FEMA's standard, which would have cost them a lot more in flood insurance. So we're finding that the proactive planning isn't just good from a resilience standpoint, it's actually saving folks money. And the private sector is now understanding the benefits from an insurance savings perspective, from a damage reduction perspective as well.
So I guess I'd also be interested in, like, maybe if they had implemented something that didn't work so well, you know, like I mean, it sounds like you are giving an example of something that you think was a good thing that they implemented. I guess I'd also be interested in if they had done some things that maybe had some unintended consequences and isn't something we would want to
We
do.
can follow up with a list. We don't want to start
Okay.
publicly shaming.
Right. That's all I have.
Okay. We will definitely take you up on your offer. Thank you for that and appreciate it. When one does start to develop the plan, obviously, if we focused in on 2040, whatever we do to get us ready for 2040 has to be a building block that takes you out to 2060 or 2080 or whatever. I think we've covered everything. I would just be redundant if I was going over what everybody else already went over. So we thank you for coming today, and through Marshall, we will follow up with you and schedule a get together. So thank you again. You know, we're ripe for getting something down on paper that we can really start to chew on and get working on. Okay, so thank you again. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on. Next on the agenda is public comments. Lenelda, do we have anybody here for public comments?
We have no pre-registered public comments
Well,
today.
Is anybody, did you want to say anything? I'm twisting your arm, please.
Diane Matthewman, Bel Air Drive. I wanted to thank the commission for getting the bucket trees. I'm really anxiously awaiting to get one at Bel Air Drive so that it's at my path, but I did want to just thank you for approving that.
Of course. Okay, we will move on now to announcements. I won't go through the board vacancies because we're going to be filling them in the next 10 minutes. Meetings and events coming up. June 21st at 2 o'clock is a charter review board meeting. On the 22nd at 12 o'clock is a town commission special meeting. That might be starting the budget review process. Am I correct?
Yes, and I'll give you a little bit of highlights at the end of the meeting.
Okay, that means they're good if he's going to start sharing. On July the 5th, the town hall is closed in observance of Independence Day. On the 6th would have been the next town commission meeting, but that has been canceled because Marshall will be on vacation. I think he needs one.
A well-deserved vacation.
Well deserved, you bet. July 8th at 2 o'clock, Financial Advisory Board, special meeting. They'll be working on the budget. On July 12th at 2 is a Charter Review Board meeting. On the 13th at 1:30 is the Town Commission special meeting. And on the 19th, 2 o'clock is the Charter Review Board meeting. There are 3 board action reports. They start on page 32. I have a note on mine to look at page 33, so I guess I made a note on page 33.
Mayor, am I correct in that we have a meeting on July 20th as well?
What was that on the 20th?
Yeah, that's the first and third Tuesday, right? Confirming
Yeah, and there is nothing on the 20th.
so far.
Your next meeting is the 20th of July. I'm looking at Linelda, she's shaking her
Right.
head. Just
Oh,
the
July,
6th,
yeah.
Anything that was critical to handle on July 6th, we'll move it to July 13th, and then, because that's the tentative maximum millage rate, and then the next week is your regular meeting schedule back on, so we'll pick back up and
Mayor,
Yep, just confirming. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Also, we have on the website 2 listings for June 22nd, the special meeting. It's listed twice. Was that just an oversight?
I'll make the change. We were updating Muni code and we had to pull some out and pull some back in. So I'll look at that.
Got it.
Okay.
So it's just the one meeting. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Under the motion, the second motion on page 33, seems to be some error here. It says towards the bottom of that motion, it says to apply for and obtain a permit for the dock at a cost of $250 a day and award the town $250 for the cost of prosecution. Now, should that read, it's a question really, a permit for the dock at a cost of $250 a day after the 30-day period?
I can have Beverly come in and answer that. 'Cause she's attended that meeting. It could have been the motion that they made at that time, but I'll have Beverly come in here.
Like, okay, I guess what I'm asking is when does the $250 a day commence?
I will have Beverly look into that and we'll get back with you shortly.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to ordinances. Begins on page 39, ordinance number 2021-008. It's a second reading. Ordinance of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 5, Boards and Committees, Division 1, generally of the Town Code of Ordinance by amending Section 2-99, procedure for appointment and filling of vacancies, qualification for membership of boards and committees, terms, to strike the language requiring a conditional resignation to serve on a secondary advisory board, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability and codification, and providing an effective date. The first reading was on June 1, 2021. It's a second reading. I don't think there are any questions unless somebody has one. We'll run through it real quick. John, got anything?
I don't know.
Evelyn? Peggy?
Yes, sir. I wondered if we ever had Mr. Torsivia check with the State Ethics Board on this. I was just a little confused on the changes, the twice changes here.
Did we check? Are we okay?
There were no problems.
No
Wait.
problem?
You spoke to
I tell them
the,
about the changes that we were making. And it was fine.
but you spoke to the state?
Left a message and then got a call back from her name, one of the attorneys up there.
Because it's just that the state code provides a different code to this, not allowing multiple board positions by one person. So I don't understand the law behind we're making a lesser strict code than the state requires. I thought we could only make laws that are more strict. I don't understand the procedure here.
She didn't have any concerns. I could follow back up with her again if you want, but when I told her what we were doing, it was fine.
I mean, I'm fine doing it with our town, but it clearly conflicts with the state ordinance. That's what I don't understand. I'm not a municipal attorney, so I think we need to be very clear on this.
Again, if you want me to follow up again, I could do that again.
I don't know, everyone. Mayor?
No, you followed up and you got to follow it up.
Said it
and
was
Okay,
You got a clearance, so we're fine.
okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Natasha.
No concerns.
Okay, I got nothing. Need a motion?
Okay, Mayor, just before the motion, this is a public hearing and we have no comments for this item.
Okay,
Thank you.
now a motion.
Okay, I move that we approve ordinance number 2021-008 as currently presented.
Okay, was there a second?
Second.
We need a roll call on it.
Commissioner David,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick-Simon,
Yes,
and Mayor Hillman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next is found on page 49, ordinance number 2021-009. This is also a second reading. Ordinance of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the Town Code of Ordinances to adopt a new Chapter 34, Fire Rescue, providing for the creation of a Fire Rescue Department and the department's function and composition, providing for the appointment of a fire chief, providing for the severability and codification, and providing an effective date. First reading was on June 1, 2021. John, you okay with it?
I am fine with this. Yep.
Okay, Evelyn? Peggy? Any
yes,
comments?
thank you. Nope, good.
Okay, Natasha?
I'm good with it.
Okay, I'm good with it. Are there any public comments?
There are no public comments for this item. Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion.
I move we accept ordinance number 2021-009 as presented.
And a second?
I second.
Okay,
Okay.
we need a roll call.
Commissioner David,
Yes,
Vice Mayor Moore,
Aye.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick-Simon,
Yes,
Mayor Hillman.
Yes,
Motion carries. Thank you.
okay.
And Mayor Hillman, before we move on, you had questioned page 33 of the Code Enforcement Board report. That motion was transcribed verbatim. That is the motion that was made at that meeting and it's transcribed verbatim.
Interesting.
perhaps we need to go back to them for clarification on that motion since
Yeah,
it's a little muddled.
I think
So-
we need to. Because
So,
unless somebody else understands it, I don't.
No,
Usually I will reach out to Mr. Rubin, who is counsel for the Code Enforcement Board for clarification
Thank you.
and email you back once we receive that.
Okay, and then we can decide.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good catch.
And thank you for checking, Linelda.
You're welcome.
Okay, no consent agenda, no unfinished business. Move on to new business. Can be found on page 56, item A. Consideration and discussion on the annual budget projection for the fire rescue services and the First Amendment to the interlocal service agreement. I will turn this over to Marshall.
Okay, I usually don't go this hard, but I'm recommending you deny this, consistent with your last action, and that we request that they recalculate their budget pursuant to the contract. I did confirm with Mr. Torsivia that they cannot unilaterally change a contract provision. So we had a more robust conversation back in August. It's hard to believe it's that much time has passed. They are insinuating they have the right under the contract language of full force and order. Mr. Torsivia and I don't see it that way. I won't speak for him. But again, at this point, we know the direction we're going. You just passed an ordinance to establish a fire department and we're moving right along. That's all I have.
Okay, Glenn, would you like to comment?
Disagree with Marshall. I mean, just the fact that they're requesting an amendment indicates that they realize that they can't unilaterally change this. The contract's very
Exactly.
clear to what we pay in terms of an annual service fee, and it's based on 22.5. And you can't just take that provision and say, oh, we want to increase it to 26.5. So our answer is no. And as Marshall says, pay them what we're supposed to pay them under the agreed to contract, not to what they want it to be.
Evelyn, would you like to comment?
I mean, that's pretty standard contract law. You don't get to change the terms by yourself.
Yeah.
Because contract is a meeting of the minds, and obviously there is none. I mean, if we're going to go into, so send back a very heavy no. What part of no didn't you understand? But then I'm looking at their proposed budget, and I have to tell you, places where they've got an 81% increase or a 37% increase, that's outrageous. I mean, seriously. Does anyone know what the cost of living increase is this year?
Not 81%.
Well, I know not 81%, but usually
Oh,
it's 2 or
probably around
3%.
2.5.
Yeah, I mean, their lowest amount is 17%. That's absurd.
Well, what's interesting, I mean, I knew we weren't going to sit here and analyze this as a group. However, their salaries are up 19%, and we know the bulk of that is the 4 lieutenants.
But it's
But
the
their
overtime.
retirement is up 41%,
Right.
but their health is up 27%. But you go down and look at the health insurance is up 39%. I mean, this stuff is all over the lot. But I guess we need an official motion and an official vote not to accept this. Is that correct?
Correct, please.
Okay.
I
So
move
would you like
that-
to make the motion?
I will make that motion. I move that we respond to Delray and tell them that we do not accept the addition of 4 new firefighters and that we would ask to have their proposed budget changed to reflect that.
Do we
I
have a
second that motion.
That was quick.
Yeah. You know where I stand.
So do
Okay.
we discuss now? So
Wanna
I guess,
discuss it? No, we can
I
discuss it.
guess I'm just curious, like, at what point is this considered a breach or
It's not-
is this not a breach?
No, they
No.
just
They're
requested
just requesting
putting
something.
4 more in and gave us the rationale as to why, which is essentially the same as what they asked for. I guess it was back in August or whatever it was.
Okay.
Yeah, to me, they're asking for an amendment. And as you know, we've heard from Glenn, obviously they know what they're doing. They want to change the contract. They get some gall, I have to say, in making this request with this kind of an increase. I mean, you're talking about $782,000, and then what that might portend for the future when we get these increases without notice, really. I mean, if
Well, this is the notice. Look at it, the roles were reversed. We would want to put the 4 in also. I mean, I don't fault them for asking for it.
You can ask. We don't have to say.
Right. And we said no last time, and they probably would say no this time, but they're asking.
Yeah.
So I guess we need a roll call vote on it.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick Seidman,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
yes,
Vice Mayor Moore,
Aye.
and Mayor Hillman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And Mr. Mayor, just some information, in case either side ever decides to declare a breach, there is a procedure for that. It's a 1-year notice as of the upcoming October 1st. So it could be anywhere from 1 year to 23 months and 29 days. So if either side ever considers a breach, that's the way to go through.
Any more discussion on that before we move on?
I'm good.
Go ahead, Peg.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just wanted an update if we had been provided with any more data per requested from the city of Delray Beach or any financials. Have we had any new information provided per our request?
More, yes. How good it is, I've gotta dig into it a little bit more. It seems to be a little more revealing. I just gotta try to put the pieces together on it. And Mr. Torsivia gave me some language where he had some additional information we will be asking for to assist in some of that look back type work. So They did provide some more, so they did. I just trying to put the puzzle pieces together is a little tricky.
Thank you. We don't have everything we requested, I presume.
They feel they have satisfied it all. So we have to then, again, once we review it, seek additional information each time through their public information request portal every time. So we'll look at it. I'll give you an update later today, waiting for the forensic accountant. We're having a talk on Thursday, and then we'll start trying to help somebody to help me put the puzzle pieces together in some semblance of an accounting record to payroll.
Thank you.
It's a process. Okay, let's move on now to under new business, item B, can be found on page 70. This begins the board assignments. So we begin with resolution number 2021-01313. This is a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection, appointments, and term of office of members of the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board and providing for an effective date. If we take a look at page 70, we'll see that there are 4 open vacancies. There are 2 reappointments. And there are 5 people listed for potential appointment. You can take off the last person, that Mitchell Packler. Just cross that off. How do you want to go about this now, Marshall? Do you want us to?
So this,
Obviously, the reappointments get reappointed.
those are the easiest, right?
Okay.
We like the performance of the current members, so
Right,
reappointing,
so
keep that good work going is easy. It's the open vacancies where you'll see as you go board to board, oddly enough, some applicants filled out every slot and ranked them. Some did not and only picked a couple. So I'm guessing that's where they would prefer to be. With the adoption of the second read, you potentially could consider, I don't know if these individuals have thought about it, on multiple advisory boards. If you wanted to do that, but I don't know. So I would hope you looked through to the greatest extent practicable that, if you know a candidate that you would like to see in one advisory board more so than the other, I think we might see some agenda items kind of blurred together. I know some folks here, since we're talking about natural resources, I know one in particular, or 2, I think, they want the natural resource board. So those would be somewhat more straightforward, but then there are some others that you'll see them on each of the boards because they were ranked in some order. So we'll have to kind of pull that piece out as we move forward. And then if we, again, I know the mayor had called me, but that, some chairs of the other boards didn't interview the candidate that put it as their backup. So it may be that you want to appoint with a condition that the chair of that board, in a sense, get the last look before it goes into effect. But again, I'm imagining if they got a positive response from one chair, most likely they'll get it from the others. I can't guarantee that, but most likely you would see that through. So you may consider potential some conditional approvals if you put somebody on a advisory board where they were interviewed by a chair of a different advisory board, or appoint them contingent on 2 things. Does that individual want to be on this different board? And 2, that chair gets a chance to meet with them prior to officially taking that position. Or as a
Okay.
commission, you could do whatever you want to, but
Also, I think Mr. Davison is not qualified as well. Is that correct?
at the moment, no, there's a few
Okay.
things that need to be addressed, and then that individual could come back at a later date.
Okay, so why don't I suggest this, see if we're all comfortable with it. The 2 reappointments, if we're all comfortable, we can reappoint those 2.
Yes.
Anybody disagree with that?
No, I agree. And we have Ms. Matthewman here and the other 2 ladies. They've sat through patiently. Do we need to have them, address the commission on
Okay,
anything.
does anybody want to speak with Diane, or are we all comfortable just making the reappointment?
I think that there were two, I assume these are the two ladies who are here who, that's the only board they wanted to be on. So I would say put
Well-
them on that.
Okay, and you are,
Yeah, I kind of spoke for you a little bit because I know your excitement behind a couple of the topics on the natural resource side of things, so.
okay, I know Leonard Brenner. He applied to this board and to the finance board. And I know that the chair of the finance board interviewed 3 other people.
Yes.
So he would not be on the finance board. He would only be available for this board. Well, so we're okay with the reappointments. So that's taken care of.
Yes.
You're done. Thank you for coming. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor.
So that would then leave us with Eastwood, Egan, and Brenner. And then we have to find something for this young lady.
Margarita?
She's on
Yes.
there.
Okay.
Maggie, right? Yeah.
Pardon?
Maggie is the second
Maggie?
individual listed on.
I'm sorry.
She's the second individual listed
Right.
next to Leonard. Below Leonard.
Is,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
Egan?
yeah. Would you like to be on this board? So-
Okay, well, if she and Jenny go on this board, Leonard doesn't go anyplace.
Well, he wanted to be on, he doesn't.
He
want-
wanted this or finance.
Well, I mean, I guess.
And finance is filled with the 3 that he's already selected. You got an idea?
I guess my thought is since they were here at the meeting, I'd like to extend them the courtesy of appointing them to the board.
Well, what do you do then?
We ask him to apply at a later date when there's another vacancy. I mean, he can, just because he's not a named board member, can he still participate?
Well, the other thing is we can interview all 3 and then make our decision.
So you could too, because if the FAB, if you go to that page, there are 3 that wanted the FAB more so or more exclusively, and then Mr. Brenner did pick the natural resource, then you would only have only 1 slot left on the natural resource board, which we could then come back to. The FAB would be filled up, but then you would still have an opening then back on code.
Well, there were no applications
Oh,
for.
we can put
code
him on
enforcement.
code.
There was an application.
Put Brenner on code. Perfect. Yeah, because
But that wasn't even a board that he expressed interest
Packler's
on.
name was on code, but he didn't on code. He's going on finance. Good idea. Put Brenner on code. And then you 2 can go on this. Everybody comfortable with that?
And when you say you 2, who are the 2 again?
Who's on
Oh, you can't see that.
I don't know.
I can't see you.
This whole thing.
It's Maggie and
Maggie Chapelier.
Egan.
Eastwood Egan.
In Virginia. Okay,
Yes, Virginia,
She had to leave, but she was.
who had to leave.
very good. Okay.
Okay,
Well, I'm
Now-
a very enthusiastic supporter of
Have they
Maggie.
been- have they been interviewed?
yeah.
Yes,
They were both interviewed?
Yes.
Oh,
They were-
okay,
Clark interviewed everybody.
they were vetted.
okay. That
Now,
takes care of
those
that.
board members were invited to come to the meeting. We did reach out, just so you all know.
Okay, now let's make the Brenner appointment on code enforcement contingent on the chairman interviewing him.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, let me, not to put a curveball, but to follow up on what Commissioner Simon said, you can appoint to multiple but not the quasi judicial. So you can't have a person serving on code enforcement and another.
Right.
Okay. And that was and I should have said that to you before when you were talking about the ethics. That was the reason why you can't have two people on those quasi judicial, a person serving on two of those, but advisory purely is okay.
Okay, that's a big
Yeah, and I
help.
apologize for not
I
telling you
just,
that
right,
before.
I just want to be lawful here in our appointments. Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Okay, if we go to item C, resolution
so-
number 2021-014 can be found on page 105. Resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection appointments and term of office of members of the Financial Advisory Board and providing for an effective date.
Mayor
Yes.
Hillman, before we move, Ms. Linnell, I'm sorry, before we move forward, actually, we need 4 new members on the Natural Resources Preservation Board. We
Is
have,
that 4
Correct,
plus
but
the
you're-
reappointments
so right
or
now,
4 including the reappoint?
it's 4 new ones plus the reappointment.
So that's 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
let's
my
back up then. Oh, hold
And,
all tickets.
and since
confusing.
that's,
She did not, she don't think she applied? No.
no. But since that's an advisory board, somebody could serve on that board as well as one of the other boards.
Yeah, go back to page. What was it, 70?
Again, I would just preface, you don't feel forced to fill every seat
Right.
because you're gonna have there's gonna be a hole somewhere. It just depends on, so if natural resource operates with 6, that's okay. And if codes those are things that you'll have to take a look at. There's gonna be a couple of boards that'll be empty, and I don't want you to feel pressure to feel like you have to slot everybody out of this group. I mean, we'll fill them, we'll come back, and then we'll know that there's 2 or 3 more openings, and then we'll get the next call for candidates and move them back in. Because it looks like we're making some
Okay.
progress here.
All
So
right,
just to
then-
clarify, we
Then
can do-
put Brenner on natural resources,
Okay.
where he wanted to be in the first place.
So we would have 3 appointments,
And-
Brenner,
Yep.
Chevalier.
And then forget about the idea of putting him on code enforcement.
Okay. So,
And Mayor, to
Okay.
reiterate what Marshall said, I do know of 2 people who are not in town who are interested on boards,
Great.
including Miss Hightower. I don't know what, she's probably busy with the kids, but if we did have an opening, we can redirect them at a later date this summer.
That'd be great.
So we do have people interested, but not in a place where they formally applied yet.
Now, are we supposed to be interviewing these people?
If you so choose, yes.
Are they online?
well, we have Peter, but he is for item C. Peter Weiner, he's for item C.
Okay, so we don't have.
And Mitchell Packler, he's,
Okay, hold on a minute. Of what we've already done, are any of these people available for interview?
Leonard
Yes.
Brennan was, but he never showed up. Lennon Brick-
Chevalier's here.
Ms. Chevalier.
Yeah.
No,
Chevalier.
only this young lady. Please take the podium.
And that's it. Okay.
Let's do this correctly.
You can skip me.
Would you bring bribery stuff? This is adorable. You don't get one?
What is it?
I got one, yes. Thank you.
Adorable.
Margarita Chapelier, Maggie Chapelier.
Hello, Maggie. Thank you for sitting through all this.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to start with John. John's up on the screen, John Shoemaker, Commissioner Shoemaker.
Hi.
And he might ask you a question or two, or he might just pass. We'll see what happens. John, it's all yours.
Well, I will have to reinforce her candidacy since I went to her home. We talked about some of the issues that she is most interested in. Actually went on a boat ride with her and her husband to go into the intercoastal and talk about a lot of natural resource issues. So I spent some time and wholeheartedly support her. I feel as though I know enough, and she's got enough, not only background, past experience, but boy, is she enthusiastic. So you got a green light from me. And I didn't get a goodie.
I have one left. Welcome. Thank you for applying, because it's nice to see people who have not been involved get involved. And as far as speeding on the intercoastal, I was sitting and looking out the window yesterday. Did you see
And-
that? Did you see that boat?
Well, these were
The-
smaller boats.
No, this is the fountain that went up and down
Oh,
all
no.
night. And I was thinking about the manatees. I'm thinking, they
no,
don't
this
have a
was
chance.
during the day. This was about 2 o'clock. And I saw this boat go, and the woman sitting catty-corner to me at the table said, "What boat?" I said, "It went that fast that you didn't even see it as it went through," which happens just before the bridge is opening, or just as it's opening before it closes. And it's bad.
Yes, it is. And I was thinking when I was listening to the people that were here before, other than raising the seawalls with the high tides and all that, the way these boats go, they just wash stuff right into our swimming pools. But the state doesn't, or the county doesn't care about property, but the manatees too.
Well, you're right. They come up the canals on the side, and anyone who's got their boat docked on these side canals, they get slammed.
Oh, no. Well, we have our boat being slammed, but my husband put 3 bumpers with a board. We don't have any problem. So this is not a selfish move on my part.
Yeah, no.
I was a science high school teacher. I taught my students to respect the environment. And I'm seeing these boats and they don't care.
Okay.
And I've been a resident of Highland Beach since 1986, probably longer than most people in this room. And back then, yeah, we had boat traffic, but not like it is today, because people have bigger boats, faster boats, and there's more boats. Nobody goes out on a canoe or a paddle or thing
Kayak.
on the weekends, because you can't, it's crazy. But that's why I'm interested. Also the beach, of course. Listening to the people before me, I had no idea. Those numbers really scared me about what's happening with climate change.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Your resume is lovely, your
Thank you.
enthusiasm is wonderful, and you have my vote.
Yes, thank you. We did listen to that boat last night for 2 hours, and my husband went out there when it was stalled behind our house and they took off. It
Oh,
was
that's
very
right, because you
strange.
live near me.
Yes, they
And that
took off.
boat comes down Bel Air Drive. I don't know where he lives, but it was like up and down.
2
It was
hours the
6
guy was
o'clock.
flying, right, at least 50 miles an
And the
hour.
minute he hit the intercoastal, he went vroom.
Very strange. So
That
I-
is very strange.
I do concur. Secondly, I did read your previous emails concerning the manatees from the past 2-3 months. You seem eminently qualified, and I thank you. I do have a question. Where did you get such wonderful enthusiasm for the environment and the sea critters?
I was a science teacher.
That's it.
I have a degree in, I have a master's in education, science education. I was a doctoral candidate at FAU. I got my specialist degree in curriculum and instruction. These are skills that you all may find useful here.
that's
That
great.
to educate people, I could help you with that part. What they were talking about earlier, educating the public. I could be helpful with that.
Well, I appreciate it, and my vote is definitely a big yes. Thank you so much, Maggie.
You're welcome.
Yes, and I also thank you for your volunteering. It's really great to have more people involved. I think your background is excellent and like really a perfect fit for what we're trying to fill here. And I have personally also experienced your passionate approach to all this, and I agree with what you're trying to implement and all that. So I also totally agree with the appointment and fully support.
Thank you.
My associates covered it all. So once you take care of the speed, would you then start working on the noise? So we get both taken care of?
Those of us were on that call that we generated, that Zoom call, we can't go the route of the boat speeds of property damage. It's the environment. He knows
I
what
know.
I'm talking about.
I know. But thank you for volunteering. We very much appreciate your efforts.
Okay. And Jenny as well, she had to leave early.
So you're
And
vouching
even-
for her then?
Oh, yeah, she's my
Okay.
neighbor. She's my neighbor.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I
Mayor?
guess we have to vote, maybe we do it all at once. 1, 2, 3, yes.
Yes.
So there's a motion to approve resolution number 2021-013.
And that is for the two reappointments, Mr. Brenner, Mrs. Chapelier, and Mrs. Eastwood Egan to fill the Natural Resource Advisory Board slots.
Thank you.
Okay.
So who made, I need the first motion?
I move that we do what Marshall just said.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
And I second it.
Well done. Okay, now we're moving on to 2020.
Mayor, can I just interrupt for a second? I assume everybody knows that I believe there was a boating accident just a week ago and somebody actually died. Can anyone confirm that?
It was on a Sunday.
I don't think
Marshall, you know.
I don't think the individual has died, but their conditions did worsen and we're still waiting to hear anything more.
I believe it was in front of our municipal complex, was it not?
Coronado, I
Oh,
believe. Yeah.
Coronado. And I believe Boca, who responded, Chief? Was it Boca Raton? My family saw Boca Raton police boat fly by and then a
They
fireboat.
came and assisted in their fireboat. They happened to drift over to our side of the intercoastal. So we responded to help get the victim out of the water instead of drifting over the Boca side. Boca Fire Rescue and Boca Police Marine responded and assisted.
So was it a collision of two craft?
It was a collision in a wake. Preliminary, it didn't seem like the excessive speed was an issue, just of a judgment in the intercoastal boating area. So they're working it, though. FWC is working it.
Chief, did Delray respond?
Delray Fire Rescue, yes. Delray Fire Rescue was there, assisted as they pulled them out of the water and took them to the hospital. The one boat owner.
Thank you.
Okay, it's on page 105. If we can turn to that. The two reappointments are both Greenwald and Riami. They're serving on the Charter Review Board. So they've resigned. Now we passed our resolution. Now they can get back on. So I think that's just a matter of, do we even need to vote on that? Or is that just?
It'll be in the motion, the reappointments plus the new. So it's just a matter of once if you're agreeable with there appears to be three.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yes.
Goldberg, Mr. Packler, and Mr. Weiner are the last ones to do it.
So those three on the bottom have been interviewed and recommended by the chairperson. Are any of those three available on Zoom? Oh, one of them is here.
We do
Okay.
have David Goldberg is here for item 11C. And Mr. Packler, Mr. Packler is on the line also.
Okay,
And Mr. Weiner, Peter Weiner. We have two via Zoom and one in person for item C.
okay, Mr. Goldberg is here, so why doesn't he come to the podium and we'll chat with him first?
So just,
We're appointing three.
and one,
And then three new. Right. And the three new have been interviewed and recommended by Mr. Stern, the chairperson. Okay, so this is David Goldberg. Hi, David.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Dave Goldberg. Thank you for having me and the opportunity to have applied for the advisory board. I was first here in 2007 when I moved to Highland Beach, and I think I was in this room, and I want to say it may have been turned a little bit differently with Mayor Hagelman, and we were sitting on benches, I think, back then. But
Okay.
a few years have gone by, and I'm now married. I have two kids, We live here in Regency Highland in the townhouse. And I have a finance background, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get involved with the town.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you for volunteering.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll just take it through. Each commissioner might ask you a couple of questions. They might not. We'll see what happens. We're going to start with John, who's up there on the screen. John, it's all yours.
So I guess I don't know you or have had past experiences like I've had with some others, but could you give me a little more background as to your interest and where your skills could come to play here?
Sure. So my interest is the town building up a strong fire department. In my daily work, I work with law enforcement officers. And now that I see that the town is moving towards implementing their own fire department, I wanted to provide my experience working with finances as it relates to public safety to try and be able to assist the town as they may need assistance. And I think it's beyond just the fire, area. It's also just the overall budgetary planning.
I see. And so you have been watching what we've been doing, obviously, over the past few months here. Any observation that you'd share based on what you've seen us do?
My observations of the town at this point is I think you're going in the correct direction as it relates to services, keeping the law enforcement independent, building up your own fire department here within town. As far as some of the issues that were discussed here today in regards to the natural resources and the seawalls and things like that, I would generally say, my feedback would be you need to take a citywide approach to some of these things, not necessarily an individual approach, such as, for example, the seawall. You may not find that everyone's going to participate in that. But I think if I can help provide assistance to the commission with the others, that I've spoken with, that I can, add as a benefit.
All right. And lastly, do you have the time and how do you justify your time given, your family, your job, and so many other things going on to really support, appointment as a board member and to give it, given how important the decisions are that we're making, especially in the fire EMS, and having a financial view of this. Do you feel as though you can accommodate the time needed to do it?
So the answer is yes. I'm a small business owner. I have a factory down in Davie. As chief department, and the team may know, I leave every morning at about 5 in the morning. But I'm back most days, say midday, and I'm working from home and I'm getting my kids from school. So I'm definitely flexible as far as my schedule. I run a drop shipping company essentially for safety products that's currently located in Davie.
All right, and just one last comment. I thank you for your support of the Wounded Warrior program. I think that's outstanding and I commend it highly. Thank you. That's all I have.
Welcome. Yeah, I read your resume and your background seems to fit with this board, and I look forward to hearing your input on financing our new fire department, because that will be a long discussion, and probably in the year or two, there will be a lot more financial advisory board meetings than there normally would be, because we're going to have to be dealing with that.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Me? Hello, Mr. Goldberg. Thank you very much for applying and being involved. I think when you were in the meeting in 2007, that was before they renovated Town Hall. That was back there and faced south.
Yes.
So I used to appear in there too. So that's cool. I just wondered, you stated you have, you lead a safety product startup, but in other words, what type of safety products? I'm just curious.
Sure, we manufacture body armor. So our mission is to save lives. We manufacture American-made, US government certified armor. So we sell to law enforcement and private security companies throughout the nation.
Well, okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I commend you for raising kids here. It's a great place to raise them, and I wholeheartedly support your application and putting you on the board. Thank you so much.
Yes, so thank you so much for volunteering. Really appreciate the time commitment. And I just want to emphasize that it is a pretty significant time commitment, and I imagine you're aware of it. It requires, you know, sometimes looking at old videos, reading the minutes, a lot of documentation. So I just think that's really important for people to realize, especially on the Financial Advisory Board. There is a lot of background that you'll have to get yourself up to speed on, and it appears that you are well qualified to do it. Another thing that I really like about your background is it's somewhat different from some of the other board members, and I think there's so much value in having a different perspective.
Thank you.
You know, joining in the conversation. So I think that's really excellent. So I fully support you participating in
Thank
this
you.
board, and I look forward to your contributions and hopefully continued volunteering for town hall activities. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
Okay. Both the vice mayor and I came off of the Financial Advisory Board, so we both have some experience there.
Okay.
And it's great to see you applying to that because of your entrepreneurial background. I think that's going to be a nice plus for that board. One of the issues I ran into was not having a knowledge about municipal accounting. I had a good financial background, no problem, you know, reading balance sheets and statements of income, et cetera. But the municipal side of it, as Marshall can attend to, I found a little frustrating. I suspect you will also, unless you had experience in that area. Have you had any?
I've had experience with the federal acquisition regulation, so a little bit different.
Might
but,
help a little bit.
There's been times where I have looked through the code for Highland Beach over the years, but
Okay.
I'm not a professional with it.
Okay, so you're going to struggle like I did. It's not the end of the world, and you'll find it a little frustrating. Might piss you off a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Have you been following our meetings, commission meetings, et cetera, so you know what's going on in the town?
I've followed some of the meetings off and on, but I haven't been here in person in years.
Okay. Our suggestion for you would be to look at maybe the last 6 months of commission meetings and the last 6 months of Financial Advisory Board meetings.
Okay.
That'll get you up to speed pretty quickly to see what the issues are that we're facing.
Okay.
Obviously, the finances are the finances. You'll have access to any of that. Marshall can bring you up to date on those. Do you have any questions of any of us on the commission while you're here?
No, just thank you for this opportunity. You know, I've been here for a number of years, and you know, Highland Beach is really a great place to raise children and for my family. I'm 46 years old. I've been coming to Highland Beach since I was 13, and I look forward to getting involved and trying to help make a difference with what you're all doing here.
Well, we look forward to your helping us, and we thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we need a motion.
I move that we,
don't go through all the
Or
candidates.
we can wait and do them all at one time. Is that
Yeah.
better?
Yes.
oh yes, let's do the
Yeah.
Wait for that?
two.
Okay,
Yeah, we have
let's
people online.
let's
So
bring
you,
up the next
you
one.
still have two online.
Yep,
Who you gonna let it first?
bring up whoever you have next.
Weiner, Mr. Peter
That'd
Weiner.
be fine.
He's on.
John, you want to take it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is he on?
You probably can't see him, can you?
Actually, he is now. I can now. Okay. Sorry about that.
Hear us?
That'd
be fine.
So I was just trying to pull it up. I looked at your resume separately, but what page is it on right now? Just want to refresh my memory.
John, you want
Yeah.
to take it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is he on?
I am on,
Well,
for-
you
I only
probably
have
can't
about
see
5
me.
minutes because I'm on another Zoom call.
Actually, he is now. I can now. Okay. Sorry about
140.
That'd be fine. So I was just trying to pull up, I looked at your resume separately. What page is it on right now? Just want to refresh my memory. John?
You,
Oh,
you
I'm
too.
sorry. Is he on?
I am on, for- I only have about 5 minutes because I'm on another Zoom call.
Actually, he is now. I can now. Okay.
You-
That'd be fine. So I was just trying to pull up, I looked at your resume separately. What page is it on right now? Just want to refresh my memory. John?
You,
Oh,
you
I'm
too.
sorry. Is he on?
I am on, for- I only have about 5 minutes because I'm on another Zoom.
Actually, he is now. I can now. Okay.
You-
Actually, he is now. I can now.
you-
So I was just trying to pull up, I looked at your resume separately. What page is it on?
John, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, just hold on a minute. We're getting a
Wow.
lot. So let's
Yep.
just,
Okay, he's good now.
Okay.
Mr. Weiner, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
okay, we're going to try it once more, John. If we're getting that same echo, I'm going to put my hand up and we'll just have to pass on you, okay?
Yeah, I don't know why it's not on my end, I don't think, but anyways. So Peter, can you just give us, again, a summary of your interest, your skills, and how you would contribute in this role?
Yeah, so I've been in the finance industry my whole life. I ran I started my career at Lehman Brothers. I have a fixed income and equity background. I restructured pension plans for the last 18 years.
Yes.
I ran a global sales team for the second largest asset manager. I'm a full-time resident in Highland Beach, and I just want to give back to the community. That's pretty much in a quick nutshell.
And running your own business and.
I'm working for a corporation now. I just, I retired when I came down here at 55. I got bored and now I'm running sales for a fintech firm out of New York.
A fintech firm, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the point is that, and as we've talked about, your world is a little different than the municipal finance world, or have you been involved in that or exposed?
I was exposed to that too. I brought, if you know the Veterans Land Board down in Texas, I brought their bonds to market. So, I understand that field. When I went through the training program at Lehman Brothers, you rotate in every area of, and municipal finance is one of them.
I see. All right. Well, we definitely need skilled, knowledgeable financial input to what's going on here. We need people with that background. So thank you.
Thank you.
You can drive that rule at an account or portfolio level, right? And then that's going to drive.
I'm Evelyn David, and welcome.
Welcome. We live in the same building.
I knew the previous owners of your apartment.
What?
Owners of your apartment.
Yeah, we own as well as rent in the building as well.
Great. Well, it seems to me, based on what you've just spoken to John about, that you have a background in municipal finance and that you also have a background in pension plans. And that's a very specialized thing. And we can use somebody with that particular kind of background because you'll be looking at that type of information because we have to deal with pension plans, especially said fire department. We're going to have to need to deal with that type of provisions. And I think that your background will be very beneficial. So thank you for volunteering.
You're welcome.
Peg, it's all yours.
Hello, Mr. Weiner. I'm Peggy Gossett-Seidman, and thank you for applying also. I'm just very thrilled that we have so many competent and well-intentioned residents coming out to assist us. I really don't have further questions. I think that your background lends itself perfectly to our needs, especially with the fire department coming on board, which we have tremendous community support for. And so I thank you. I don't have anything else at this time.
Thank you.
Product classes and almost an ad example, right? And that would be the numerator and then the denominator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiner, for volunteering. I really appreciate your time towards this. I'm look at your background, and I think it's just perfect. There's a project that I'm really excited about, looking at what are the surplus levels that we need for the town, and you know, you're going to be key, I think, also in helping to set the right levels of reserves that we need. So I am fully supportive of you joining the board, and again, I thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
Peter, I have no questions at all. Your background's spot on for what we need. You're going to enjoy working with the team that's on this board. I know all of them, and of course, just met David. He's terrific. He's going to be great as well. And Mitchell coming up behind you here, I'm not so sure of, but we're going to give him a chance. We'll see how he works out. Okay, but you're going to enjoy working with the group. It's a great group. So thank you for volunteering. Okay, you have any questions of us before we sign off with you?
No.
No? Okay, we're all good. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's move on to Mitchell Packler.
And
He's not up yet. There's Mitchell.
so, Mitchell, this is John Shoemaker. Again, I'm not familiar with you and your background. If you could just summarize, you know, what you're trying to do, what's your goal in all of this, and how you will bring your skills to bear on what we need to do and on the board.
Are you talking to me, Mitchell Packler?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't hear anything you said. Can you just hold 1 second, please? I
Okay.
wasn't prepared for you. Hold on 1 second, okay?
He's a great guy.
This is Verizon.
Fabulous.
I apologize. I'm having terrible internet problems and phone problems today. So I was just about ready to hang up, and then you came on. So I'm sorry, what is your name?
Okay, I'm John Shoemaker, and we've had our own problems just recently, as a matter of fact. But in any event, given your background, which I'm not familiar with, and the skills you might have, what are your goals in being able to contribute to the board at Highland Beach?
Well, look, you know, I'm a community person, so I spend a lot of time on community organizations. I've spent a lot of time being a lay leader on boards. I've done. Have been the chair of the finance committee of the Jewish Association on Aging. I'm the past board chair of the Jewish Association on Aging and Jewish Family Insurance Services. Also past president of Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. So I bring to the table, a lot of experience in, community relations, so to speak.
So, but in this regard, will you have the time to do the homework, to get involved in the details? I know it's a volunteer position, but it's so important to us at this point. So I'm just
No, I absolutely, I wouldn't, to be honest with you, John, I absolutely wouldn't have taken it to this point if I didn't think that I had the time. I'm looking forward to it. It's something that I really wanted to do.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
And I assume you know the others on the commission, but again, it's important to have the right skill sets. I think that putting together this board is going to be really important for us, given what we're going through, especially with budgets, taxes, and EMS fire safety.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm aware of those things, but I'm not aware of any of the other people on this board.
I see. Okay, well, very good then. Thank you.
So listen, I'm a new face.
In many ways, so am I.
Okay, good.
Okay, Mayor.
Okay, Mitchell, can you see us?
I can see you right now, yes, because I now have internet.
You were just talking with John Shoemaker, who is one of our commissioners, but he's up at his home in just outside of Boston right now. So the rest of us are commissioners here. And what we will do is each of us will kind of take a shot at you, see if you can handle this.
Sure.
Okay. And we also have just finished interviewing 2 others that will be associates of yours on this financial advisory board. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to my associate to my right, Evelyn David, and she'll ask you a couple of questions.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see new faces. It's nice to have new people involved. Your background looks great. I think that you'll bring an interesting perspective, and I find that on boards such as the FAB, it's important to have mixed backgrounds, that you don't want everybody to have exactly the same background because then you don't get the right results. So, and Doug says you're a great guy, so back up. Thank you.
Boy, you got away easy with her, didn't you? Okay, Peggy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mayor. Hello, Mr. Packler. I'm Peggy Gossett-Seidman, Commissioner. You had an outstanding resume and it actually appeared in my packet 6 times. So I'm well aware of your excellent background. I wanted to ask if I could, you stated that really an excellent background for this board. You stated that you had been in sales in the Northeast medical products.
Yes.
What that involves.
Pardon me?
I was wondering what that involves, what products or what exactly is
Northeast Medical is a medical supply distribution company located in Pittsburgh. I happen to be the owner of that company. And we have 4 different divisions within Northeast Medical. We do nursing home supply. We have a DME company. We have a wear loss mattress rental business. And if you need me to give you any more information, I will. And we also have a mail order diabetic supply business.
Excellent. Okay. That's certainly diverse. And then your volunteering in many levels is excellent, and particularly for our community. So I don't have further questions. I'm really thrilled to have the level of quality of people such as yourself applying, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that.
I'm going to turn you over to the vice mayor now, and she's very tough. So I hope you can field the questions she's going to have.
Okay, I'm ready.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Packler. And I
Nice meeting you.
For your volunteerism. I guess one question I had, is this your first time volunteering for like municipal type work?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And any specific motivation to start getting involved?
Well, I just spend an awful lot of time in Highland Beach, and it was just it seemed like a natural progression. It was just something that I really wanted to do, to get involved in on a more, as you call it, municipal level, as opposed to all of the volunteerism that I'm doing now with nonprofits.
Any concerns that you see with the town?
No, I don't at all. I happen to like Highland Beach very much.
Great. Well, yeah, I don't have any further questions. Just again, thank you for volunteering, and I really look forward to your contribution.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Mitchell. I was suggesting to David, who will be an associate of yours on the board, that you take a look at possibly the last 6 months of commission meetings. They're all available on the website on video. And also the last 6 months of the Financial Advisory Board meetings as well. That'll get you up to speed real quick because we're coming into the budget time now, and the Financial Advisory Board will be meeting obviously to review the budget and make their recommendations to the commission on it. So that way you don't come in cold.
Great.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Obviously, I don't have any questions of you. Do you have any questions of us? Anything that?
No, I really don't. I mean, I think that you had told me, Doug, that there were, maybe 6 meetings throughout the year on this commission.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
I lied a little. That's 6 for the first 3 months. Now that you're on it, I can tell you the truth.
That's very funny.
Yeah, you'll have to register to vote down here.
Yeah, I guess so. Huh?
Anybody have anything before we sign off here? Okay, well, thank you for your time and thank you for volunteering. And
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting all of you in person.
That's great. And we'll get information off to you.
Perfect. Vaccinated and ready to go. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, we need a motion for all 3.
I move that we approve resolution number 2021-014, reappointing Richard Greenwald and Ronald Rayami to the Financial Advisory Board, and appointing David Goldberg, Mitchell Packler, and Peter Weiner to the Financial Advisory Board.
Well done.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we can now move on to page 147, which is resolution number 2021-015, resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection, appointments, and term of office of members of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals Board, and providing for an effective date.
So on this one, you're looking at just 2 reappointments. That's it. Because this is a quasi judicial, so it would be just the 2.
Right.
Yep.
Okay,
So do we just need a motion?
just need a motion.
Okay. I move that we approve resolution 2021-015, reappointing Bonnie Piquel and Eve Rosen to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is resolution 2021-16, a resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection, appointments, term of office of members of the Code Enforcement Board and providing for an effective date. It's on 162.
There'll be no action.
And there's no action on that.
And it appears the same would be said for the next one, which would be for the planning board. There will be
On
no appointments at all. So
172.
code and planning, there are no action.
I guess we
Candidate.
just skip it. Don't even have to read it in.
There's nothing there. And then we'll re-advertise those as we traditionally do and update all of our actions that we still have some openings on a couple boards here.
Okay, move on to G 186, resolution number 2021-18.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Sorry, Clerk Gaskins had a question.
I'm sorry.
You're all right. Okay, thank you.
Nope, we're good.
We're good. Yep. Nope. Just keep moving.
Yep. Okay, resolution number 2021-018, resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, terminating a state of local emergency within the Town of Highland Beach, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
So Mayor, if I could just
186. Yeah,
just take
it's all
a
yours,
quick
Marshall.
moment on this. In the past, I think I've miscommunicated on this topic. There is a difference between an emergency ordinance and a declaration of emergency. And I think before, when I've communicated to you, confused those the last time we talked about this topic or in an email. And I said, oh, after 61 days, that's the ordinance, not a declaration of emergency. So we need to terminate the declaration of emergency because it wasn't an emergency ordinance. So I confused the two. I apologize. But we do have to, you don't have to, but at this point it's to sunset, if you will, and terminate the state of emergency for COVID-19.
Okay. So we need
And
a
that
motion.
means by doing so that everybody can come to the town meetings, there's no restrictions?
No, I wouldn't say that. We could still, as an organization, impose certain protocols for access and use of facilities. We still have those rights as a municipality. What it does is we're no longer under that state of emergency where I have certain independent authority for purchasing and all those things. We don't need that type of action. We can handle it at a normal business, as normal business moving forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Just to add to it, then at some point, we're going to have the new plan for how we manage interactions for the town at the town hall.
Correct. Excuse me. So we still have certain protocols in place. We strongly encourage mask wearing until you're into spaces and people let you know that they're comfortable with you removing it. More of a common courtesy. Gatherings, CDC is still kind of holding back on encouraging large crowds. So our meeting rooms and things of that nature, I suspect, unless something changes, will be closed through the summer. And then when we get into next season, you know that how that is usually in the fall, we'll open everything back up and get our normal community activities and groups back together into the meeting rooms, the jazzercise, chair aerobics, the debate clubs, democratic clubs, all that stuff will come back in the fall and start meeting again.
Okay, so we need a motion on this, just for the resolution.
Okay. I move we approve resolution 2021-018, removing the state of emergency for the town of Highland Beach.
Okay.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, last is the approval of the commission meeting minutes for March 16th and 22nd. Does anybody have any comments on either of the two? Okay. Ev,
I do. On
first.
page,
Let Evelyn go first, then we'll come to you, John.
Okay.
sure.
Trying to figure out where it was.
Oh, wait a minute, she's looking, so go ahead, John.
Page 194, second paragraph, second sentence. It says, hold on a second. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find it myself. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's the last paragraph, second sentence. He also asked if the town will need a referendum. I think there's just missing the word asked.
Where are you again?
Last paragraph, page 194,
Last paragraph.
second sentence. He also, if the town will need.
Got it.
So I think the word that's missing is the word asked.
Yep. Okay.
That's it, not a big deal.
Okay.
I can catch.
Evelyn, did you find yours?
I didn't find exactly where it was, but it was the section that spoke about those doing the sewer lines. And it seems to me, my recollection was not that we said to do 3 pieces, but that we authorized doing that which needed to be done, and we put off discussing whether we were going to put the whole bundle for referendum or not. I don't think that we agreed not to put it for a referendum. He's talking the negative.
I completely concur.
I agree also.
Yes.
But I don't know where it is.
Yeah, but it didn't sit right when I read it because I don't believe it reflected our intention.
Bottom of page 191.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. It's the second to last paragraph, I believe, is misleading and inaccurate.
Yeah,
Page 191,
right.
second to the
You're
bottom
right, the
paragraph.
second to
Yes, ma'am.
last paragraph.
Yes, and it is misleading since this is a very publicly recognizable issue.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
that really wasn't what we intended.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had discussed having a referendum and we haven't come to any conclusion one way or another at this point.
Yes, ma'am. We
were
agreed. to
told
make-
that we didn't have to, but we didn't decide that we wouldn't.
Yes, agreed.
But we would decide to go forward with the project for this year only.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, but we decided that we had to, there were certain things that needed to be done now.
Yes.
And that's what we would do, is what needed to be done now, things that were emergent.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
the rest is
So-
not emergent.
There
So
were
the
those
sen-
5 to 7 leaky breaks in the
Right.
pipes that are literally leaking, that are considered an emergent and necessary project immediately. And then we agreed to proceed with following the town codes to look at the rest of it through ordinance if needed, and through referendum rather if needed.
So with that
No.
sentence where it says Commissioner Shoemaker and David agrees, is that the sentence you're pointing out?
Yes.
So how would you like for me to proceed with that? Would you like for me to strike it, just reword it?
You could reword it just to say that we decided to discuss that. But we
Okay.
hadn't made, but we didn't make a decision to proceed without a referendum.
Okay. So I'll just say Commissioner David and Commissioner Shoemaker and David discussed.
Well, you could state that we agreed to make necessary imminent repairs based on an emergency, which our code does allow fully.
Well, also, those
then to look-
repairs didn't exceed our spending limit anyway. They were
Correct.
well within it.
Right.
It was just then the rest of the project which exceeded.
Okay, I'll modify the language.
Thank
within
you.
that. You are.
Okay, how about this? Agreed that the capital sanitary sewer rehabilitation project should commence now for the repairs. However, continued discussion is required for the entire project. You comfortable with that? Everybody comfortable with that?
Yep.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
you got it?
Yes.
Anything else? So we can approve these minutes now with those corrections?
With those corrections, so, yes.
Okay, make a motion.
I move that we approve the several sets of minutes with the corrections just noted.
Seconded.
All in favor, just say aye.
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 Okay, move on to commission comments. John?
We are continuing to work on the website edition for the veterans, the heroes of Highland Beach. Teresa has sent me another draft. I think we need to do some more work on it to make it a little more dramatic. And I'll ask Marshall to see if there's more we can do to maybe get some input from our marketing consultant that we have already. to help out with Teresa. But at least we're making progress, we're going forward, and that's that project is underway. Other than that, I don't have any other comments at this point.
Bev?
No, I think I've spoken enough for one day.
Megan?
Whoops, thank you, Mayor. Yes, in brief, I attended the League of Cities meetings for transportation, intergovernmental relations last week in Orlando. 3 very interesting and major points came out. And of course, on this board, when we meet, we review matters on behalf of the entire state, but of course, bringing what we know of our area to the table. And a prime matter that was discussed is related to roads, infrastructure, and any possible future problems with sea level rise and environment. This will be looked into further at 2 later meetings this summer, but the league looks like they will be pushing even more beyond the $600 million that is available currently in grants. That is an area that I've been looking at as we discussed. There are several options that would be available to us. Actually, U.S. Senator Scott, his office called me and gave me some pointers, both for federal and state funding. I have a good colleague who works for Senator Scott. And I'm looking into those. They open up in 3 weeks. So I'll be in touch with you on Marshall and just looking at what we can put in for. But this will be a pet project for the League of Cities on behalf of the whole state. Of course, we are sort of the first point of dynamic need for it, the second point being Southwest Florida. And then the Panhandle, there are areas there that may be impacted due to its low-lying areas. Just like New Orleans, they're just not quite as low-lying as New Orleans. And they're still trying to recover there from the storm years ago. That's a major point. There are new building codes that need to be tweaked and talked about. I don't know if we're going to need it. I'll get with you all and Marshall and our building department, but there is a new ordinance that was House Bill 401, and they do require for us to be able to implement any design standards different than the state building code. We would need to appoint a, what do they call it here? For us to protect building design elements, we would need an appearance board or a zoning board beyond the planning board. We don't have that type of board currently. It's something we could perhaps reconfigure for our planning or board, but down the road, we'll see if it's required. But it may be that we cannot supersede state building codes for appearances of homes. They're protected if it's a historical area, such as the Swinton area of Delray Beach or the Boca Raton City Hall, which are historically protected buildings. But we are not now able to preclude state ordinances for allowing whoever wants to build whatever unless we have an appearance board. So we'll see if we need this. Marshall, I'm sure will be on this when there's more information forthcoming. It was just passed and signed this month. It's just an interesting take. The point of it is the state does not want towns. It's a little less of a home rule. The state doesn't want towns telling every homeowner what they can and cannot paint or build or do to their property. There's a lessening of having towns have the authority to tell homeowners what to do, unless there's an HOA. So another interesting point is, which doesn't affect us directly right now, but there's a major push throughout the state by environmental groups on electronic vehicles. And they were interested in what a small community such as ours is doing. I discussed, for example, our chief's new hybrid. The people who are extremely environmentally sound thinkers want us to be able to have a variety of charging stations. And on the other side of that, that lessens the gas tax, which lessens our, our tax base there. And the other item that was brought up for those in seaside communities is that in evacuations, there is not an infrastructure that would allow an electric vehicle to proceed without electricity to recharge it. So if we needed to evacuate to Orlando or Tallahassee. You couldn't do it in an electric vehicle. So that puts us in a different sort of position as, say, the state of Iowa. Doesn't have that kind of an evacuation problem. So those are the main points. Another little item, being its transportation, was that drones are not lawful within, I think, 5 miles of an airport.
Right.
And I believe the south end of our town is within 5 miles. I don't know if that's something we have to deal with or the chief does, but I'm sure a public safety drone could accurately fly.
Yeah, when you're going to fly it, just later, you have to contact the airport tower. And I mean,
That would put,
there's a whole protocol that you
Yes.
go through.
apparently there've been some problems.
If you're
throughout
going to
the
go
state.
over so many feet, I don't know if it's 200 feet or.
Is that
there's-
it?
Yeah.
There's some problems in that statewide. I don't know that we
Yeah.
have them, but I thought I'd update everyone.
Yeah, it's really
Because we have an
critical.
airport.
Otherwise, you get in a flight path or something. It's interesting.
So that's the report for now. If there's anything further, I'll certainly let you all know.
Thank
you.
Yeah, so the water bills came out and I heard from 2 concerned residents. And I guess I would just say that for both of them that bubbled up to me, the key driver of the increase in their bills was their water usage. So even though our rates did go up for these 2 individuals that reached me, there was a significant increase in water usage. So I guess I just say, as each of us get questions about the water bills, look at the water bills and see what the water usage is. It's not just the rates that went up, but obviously the bills are based on usage. The other thing that I tried to emphasize as well is how the tax bill next year will go down. So I think the message to concerned residents should also include an estimate of how their tax bill will be reduced because of what we did with the water rates. So I haven't heard anything more from these concerned residents, so hopefully it addressed their concerns. The other item is I witnessed a pretty bad accident, and it involved a car with a bicyclist. And ironically, it happened across the street from the Highland Beach fire station. And it happened at about 8:15 in the morning. It looked, from what I could tell, that it was I was very concerned for the bicyclist that was struck by the car. I was very concerned for, their well-being. And because it was right across the street from the fire station, obviously went straight to the fire station. The bell, there's a sign that says, ring the bell for attention. And when I looked up, it looked like it was 8:15. By the time the firefighters and EMTs went across the street to address the person, it was I looked up, it was like 8:25. So I think it was 10 minutes that it took for the Delray Beach firefighters to respond. The police officers that were not across the street, there were people in their, officers in their cars. I don't know where they were, but they were the first on scene. Very impressive response time. I just have to express my incredible concern for what I think is an unacceptable response time for the firefighters that were in the station. When they finally came back outside after what I think was 10 minutes of ringing the doorbell, and then eventually I just started hitting the door. There was nobody in the bay. There was no one when you peeked in the window. And I guess the other thing that I found, very concerning is in our matrix study, we know, and I'm sure they know this too, that our peak call by time of day is 9 a.m. This happened at 8:15 and there was nobody. I mean, we looked into the incident and Chief Chief Hartman looked into it, and apparently the explanation was that they couldn't hear the bell.
Unacceptable.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
What you want to come up with, that is unacceptable.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to bring it up. It's unacceptable. So many words to describe what happened. Thank goodness the individual that was struck, by the time the firefighters came out, he was up walking around. But I think this is something that, you know, we should follow up with, or Chief Hartman has followed up with it. So, I mean, it sounds like that they're going to make sure that the bell can be heard from everywhere in the station. But I just want to bring up the obvious, that they know that these calls, the peak time is that time of the morning. It happened at 8:15. We have a study that shows that our peak time is 9 a.m. And just the poor response time for being across the street. And it took 10 minutes for them to respond. Very And that's it for my report.
I'm speechless. All they need is a bigger bell.
You know, we should cancel that contract.
And I just want to commend the
I
police
can't believe
officers.
it.
They were right there. I mean, they were on it like immediately. The police officers that were in the building came across the street like immediately. The police officers in their cars were like there right away. Very impressive response time from the police.
All right, well, Chief is on it.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll
It's
take care of it.
unbelievable.
Only thing I have is crosswalk lighting, the down lights that we had talked about. I think we need to move forward on those if you haven't.
Certainly, I programmed it in your budget to do it. We could always, because it is in the discretionary sales tax, so Matt and I could bring a budget amendment and we can move that forward if you want to do it sooner rather than in the fall. I mean, it's a timing issue. We just hadn't programmed it anywhere, but we have it budgeted for next year in that discretionary sales tax. We can move it forward. If that's the desire of the group, I'd be more than glad to do that.
I would suggest we do it sooner rather than later, if everybody's in agreement.
I agree, since COVID has usurped our funds 2 years in a row.
Okay.
And if we could
I
also,
think we're all in agreement.
yes.
Thank you.
Mayor, if we could add to the lighting, if Marshall could provide an update, because looks like we got the street lights up and running in many places. So if he could update us on that too.
Great.
That contributes to the lighting.
Okay. That's all I had. Len? Nothing? Good. Okay, Marshall, it's all yours.
After Glenn's pep talk. So let's go into a few things. I'll start with the latter and move to the prior, but FP&L, we met with FP&L. They've made a commitment to reprioritize us in the horizon. Commissioner Gossett-Seidman, thank you. They are now paying quite a lot of attention to us, so that is good. They acknowledge that there are some lights out, this and that. Code enforcement has sent a letter to homeowners with lights to give them an opportunity to trim it first, because FP&L said, we'll do it, but please understand it's going to be a hack and whack job if they come through. So we're giving homeowners an opportunity to clear it if they wanted to see a more groomed cutback of the trees around the lights. But they have acknowledged that they will come in, at least immediately replacing the lights that are burned out as they're required and reported by police to them. They're now taking a more active role in that. So FP&L is back in town. Of course, also telling us that our rates are going to go up. So everybody, your electric bill is going up. So be prepared for that. I don't know if the state will grant them their request, because it is the Public Utility Commission has to grant their increase, but they haven't had an increase in a while, they said, and you could be looking, 10, 12% increase on your electric bill. So I'll keep you posted once the Utility Commission approves that. Back to the Florida League of Cities, just be reminded of the annual conference coming up in August. For those that can attend, let us know so we can start. They have open registration, so we will get that all in place for you and get yourself ready for an exciting 3 days in Orlando discussing commission topics. Again, Lynelda and I will attend with you, but again, the agenda topics are focused on for the commission. So it's good time for you to catch up on state topics, interact with your colleagues around the state. It's a good opportunity, and you get your ethics training as part of that too, because you're required every year 4 hours. They do it there. So it's a good way to just, knock it out and get it behind you. And then we'll have a series of meetings through there, and I'll be there, and we can talk about various topics that come up and have an opportunity to, talk about general Highland Beach stuff one-on-one outside of the rigors of town hall and stuff. So it's quite valuable. But Lynelda will reach out just to confirm the dates and things of that nature. But the July 13th, we have to select a voter delegate. We do that every year. So I'll bring that on the 13th meeting so you can assign somebody to take a vote at the annual business meeting on a lot of the stuff that Commissioner Gossett-Seidman was talking about. Other committees put forth their actions, and then it's a vote of the Florida League of Cities. The good thing about that, not to feel like I'm plugging this thing for you, but the Palm Beach County group, we're pretty prevalent there. We're a good group. We can kind of go in mass. And it'll be a good opportunity to meet colleagues to talk about fire stuff when you're in with them. You'll get to see some of those other things that are going on and see how your colleagues are handling those items. Now, speaking about fire, so we have Pace Advertising is on board. They're going to help us with the educational campaign and kind of moving forward, getting materials together for us to educate the voters on the authorization for some of the capital acquisition and projects associated with our fire department. You have today put down the legal structure to form a fire department. So we've got the legal underpinnings, if you will, to build the fire department. So that's in place. Working on updating the implementation plan because we are making some progress. I know we talked about, Vice Mayor Moore talked about updating some of the colors. I got to get to that. I have not yet gone in and played with that yet, but we've been making some additional progress there. Forensic accountant, like I said, we're meeting on Thursday. We're going to touch up on the contract. I may have scared him a bit because it's a little bit more robust than most. I stare at Glenn when I say this because, I give him a hard time about it. But also on this, we got a player on board as part of our transition team. Mr. Glenn Joseph will be coming aboard to help us on the technical side and help us prepare and move towards bringing on a fire chief. That process will take some time. He estimates it could be 8 months to 10 months. I'm saying 6 to 8. So we're looking for late fall, early winter to have our fire chief in place and then to start moving forward. The background information. So a little bit about Glenn. You'll get to meet him shortly. He served with the city of Boca Raton for 27 years in the fire department. The last 9 to 10 years, if I recall properly, as their deputy chief. Then he went to Boynton Beach and was their fire chief for 4 years. And has since retired and gone into a consulting role. He has no interest in being our fire chief. His role is to provide us the technical assistance, help us knock on doors that need to be knocked on, and keep us and the team moving forward, helping Chief Hartman and I move this ball forward appropriately. So I will, once I get some draft proposal, I'll get it over to Glenn for a 12-page contract. no, 20? Okay, we're gonna go longer this one now. So once we get that in play, I'll set up some one-on-ones for y'all to meet him and understand his background, his perspective. It's very refreshing. He has a very similar look and approach, agrees that we can do this, we will be successful, but does recognize and understand some of the hurdles up front and knows all of those people that are part of the hurdles. So it will be very good for us to have somebody that knows the Palm Beach County environment intimately. So that's good. It's good news. We got an advisor in there to help us move forward. But again, our next big task outside of that, working on getting the COCPN, which Teresa and Madison, our intern, have been following the county's role right now as far as the secondary. So we're watching how the county's wrestling around with AMR and the like now. So we're seeing what they are, and the county's starting to say things that I think will be helpful for us. They're talking about potentially needing some legislative changes to the EMS ordinance. So I see that window opening for us you have to account for the primaries for new communities, starting to get into some gobbledygook here, but I think it's going to start recognizing that, that ordinance may be slightly outdated and doesn't recognize the current environment and where we're going as a community standing alone. Some others have reached out too. So we're starting to progress. I'll get some of the technical documents updated and pull everybody in place, but we're in a great shape. That would take me into, some folks listening are, we talk about there's these implementation costs. So let's talk about budget. So Matt and I went through our preliminary run through, beat up the department heads a lot to make sure they understood the responsibilities of their budget. They always appreciate their time with me on that. So we got the budget in place, and I'm telling you, your net financial position is undeterred by what you saw as that 2.81% tax rate. So you're able to accomplish your goals moving forward, putting in fire, not seeing the tax rate grow as much, and you're not affecting your net position. And as Vice Mayor Moore was saying with the water bills, we're looking at reducing your overall tax rate by 0.164. Usually look at Matt and he sprouts the numbers out, but 1.625. So almost 0.2 of a mil. You're bringing down your tax rate. You're not affecting your net position financially and able to deliver on these goals, because the biggest growth, as always, is fire. You'll see, where is that big cost increase year over year? It's in fire. A little bit in police, but Chief does a good job keeping that in check. And the stuff that he needed, the tasers, the body cameras, those type of things. So we're in a great position. You're going to hear that next week. But you'll hear us that we'll need to pledge some reserves. So don't be scared by that or taken aback, because the net impact of doing it, looking at the books that were closed out last year, we're increasing our unassigned reserves. So going into the reserves has no net impact on your financial position. We're in great shape to take this. And if anybody out there in the virtual world is listening, Highland Beach is financially prepared to undertake the task of front, and we are in a strong, healthy condition. So that's just the previews next week. So go home tonight, rest assured, we're financially strong. We can handle doing the fire and adding the cost for consultants and do these things, and we have no impact to our net position as we understand it.
It's magic.
When we get into it, but we're in a good spot.
Oops. Wait a minute.
Well, you gave me an opening. You talked about COCPN. I got to share some good news too.
Good.
You remember I mentioned the healthcare district, which has been a longstanding client, a year or so ago, started a process that was not that different from ours. And they had the ordinance changed, the EMS ordinance, because there wasn't not the ability for a government entity, for a hospital to do their own transport. You had to go through the AMR routine. And just today, the county commission, just about a half hour ago, approved their CPN application after the ordinance was changed. Then they made the application and it was approved, and they're going to now have 2 ambulances taking folks among their facilities, like their Lakeside Hospital in Belle Glade, to their nursing home in West Palm Beach, other facilities like that. So they've kind of laid a little groundwork for us.
Good. Very good.
But again, good, we're in great shape.
Any questions?
I do have a
anyone?
question.
Shoot.
So with the advisor, I'm looking at the plan and it says, develop fire chief job description and pay plan, and it starts like June. I imagine that some of these things are going to move around based on his input.
Yes, yep. So we've started looking and drafting the foundational elements of what that looks like. Chief Hartman and I have been doing research in Palm Beach County to establish that appropriate pay sphere that we're looking at for a fire chief to recruit and retain, right? So, and I've told you that, and we'll have that conversation through the budget when I say these indirect wage pressures, what we're seeing with some inflationary pressures when we start looking at bringing fire in-house and those pay ranges, it's going to have some slight indirect impact that we're going to have to catch up certain positions that aren't even in the first quartile for the area. We're going to have to start becoming a little bit competitive to attract and retain this type of talent. So we have started that. Like I said, I apologize. I haven't spent a lot of time on the implementation plan, doing all the tweaks to kind of show where we are to date, but we are making a lot of that progress. So rest assured we are on it. But as I said, having an advisor with that technical aptitude and understanding of that geopolitical environment and fire here, it's going to be helpful because we're starting to get to the point where I have to start having meetings, and it's, like I always joke around, I know enough to be dangerous, but I shouldn't be talking as an expert at some point. And I think that's where we need that person to come in that is a fire expert. So.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And then you mentioned pace and getting the public on, we have this election, it'll November. So when will they start to, or maybe they've already started the plan for the public education, since that is such a critical milestone in our plan?
I think they've started. We haven't had formal preliminaries, but we're going to start. They may reach out to you soon. I'll let you know if they need to reach out to each of you to kind of get some background, some understanding of the message, how we want to frame that message. And again, it's to educate the public. So how do we, in an effective means, communicate to the public what we're doing? But as you're seeing, as I am, everybody I talk to and explain just barely the situation with fire, everybody's on board. No one seems to be taken aback by change. I think a lot of people are embracing it and are starting to become excited. We need to spark that excitement and keep that community support, which we will need. But we are starting the contracts in place. I've had a couple of meetings with them already to kind of where we're at, what we're thinking, and they'll jump into some of that creative. And I should probably read their stuff. The mayor can start jumping on some of that lingo they all like to use and start forming up whatever this marketing plan and background and how we're going to message it, who we're trying to get to, who are the power users, how do you get them the best, what kind of products and medium do we use to get that message out. So.
And I guess one more thing, when do we look at what is the verbiage that's going to go on the referendum?
We could have Glenn start to take some look at that, and we could start having some draft language conversations. Like my gut tells me we're going to be looking at a not to exceed type of language to authorize the expenditures and authorization to undertake certain finance steps. So I think we could start drafting some of that general language and start seeing how we want that to look. And I'll leave that to Glenn to kind of start pulling that together.
Okay.
Preliminary thought is just, fire rescue standalone topic from the rest of the CAP. I'm not sure that's the direction I'm going to go, but establishing a fire rescue department outside of that.
Okay, part of that language, if I may, has to marry with the language we're using when we educate these people.
Right.
So they're not walking in and seeing something foreign on the ballot.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the other part that we're going to have to take have a deep conversation is the charter review boards narrowed down what they see are changes into 4 generalized concepts or areas. So they'll start working on that. Do we want to, for lack of better words, muddle the ballot with charter questions, or do we hold back the charter questions to the March election just to keep it truly a special election on one topic.
Right.
There's the
absolutely
strategy
right.
we'll have to think about collectively.
I guess, is it hard to get people to come out to vote? So is it better to have it all in one because people would maybe more likely vote for the fire? So then therefore you'd get a better turnout on the charter. I don't know. I just throw it out there. I really have no idea.
It's a thought, it's not a bad thought, and, but neither one of them. It's not a bad thought to separate it and focus on one,
Right,
but also you want people to vote on.
right.
Let's first see what they come up with on charter. So, because it has to come to us anyways. And let's see how much is there and how important it is. And then we can start to wrestle with it. But dividing it is an interesting thought,
Mhm.
very
Yeah,
interesting.
I agree. I
thought.
can see merits to both sides.
Look at our future is tied in, plain and simple, to fire. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't think we want to muddle it with a whole bunch of things on charter, but if there's 2 or 3 very crisp things, leave them alone and get it done. So again, I'm being redundant, but let's see what they come up with and then let's see what we think once we see it. So, but fire, going back to, we need to get our hands on, what PACE is working on. And the real challenge is getting to the people. That's the big challenge. We're not going to have a great deal of time when people start coming back really in mid-October. And we're talking about early November.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to have a lot of population here from the snowbirds. The real oomph when they come back is really after Thanksgiving. So we're only going to have, I don't know what percent, but a small percentage of the Northerners here. So, maybe we have 35% of the population,
Yes.
40% of the
You are
population.
correct, but mail-in ballot.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Exactly.
isn't there
That's what I was
advance?
driving to.
Right.
They don't
So
have to
it
be-
becomes the mail-in. But the people that are up north, are they even thinking about things down here? How do we get to them? It becomes mail and internet. Okay, and then it's nose to the people that are here. So
Yeah,
it's
so-
a divided way of reaching the audience. So that's, getting the message down is pretty simple. It's reaching them, it becomes a little more complex.
Yeah, we have
Well, we
4
can
or
do it.
5 months, right? I guess
Yeah.
I'm not clear on when that verbiage needs to be out.
So I know Linelda's working with the supervisor of election, trying to tie down those timelines. Because I don't even know if the supervisor of election knows just yet, but when usually you're a month or 2 ahead with the language, so they can get it printed out on the ballots and mail it out to the early voting concept. So I mean, that all kind of pushes where we might have need language. Let me see. It could be September, late August, September. So we're going to approve that language and then run with it. So I think we'll see that, July and August, we're going to really start making a push on the communique to the community and have that language tweaked.
Yeah,
And
well, that's around the corner.
It
Hey,
is,
that-
we're already June 15th.
Yeah, it's around the corner.
Mhm.
So we got to get
I
on the
know.
phone to these people and say, let's get going here.
of course.
Mayor?
Mhm.
I think it's important too, because of past referendums were not clearly outlined, but I think it's important for us to use language that is readily understood by people who are not in government, not in fire services, so that it's clear and simple.
100%.
Because I can tell you in the past referendums were not written, I'm not faulting Glenn or anyone else, but what I jokingly call managerese language or
Sure.
governmentese, we need to take it out of that perspective and speak to the people in clear terms.
Yep. And it has the terminology they have seen in the campaign, in the educational campaign. Otherwise, they go to vote and it's like, huh? So, yeah. But we'll get it done.
So the last thing is just, we've got the proposals for the architect. So it's going into that review, that cone of silence, as they call it, into this. And then that group will make a recommendation back to you all with who should we start negotiations with as the architect. So, but that's, You probably won't see anything till late July. Because the
Well, that
process
gi-
takes that long.
That gives you enough time. You're okay with that, right?
Sure, I'm just saying that just don't expect it. We're opening bids and it has to go through this committee process and there's a cone of silence and forms it's the statute. It's really unique to Florida.
But you
on this.
really only need that so that you can get a better handle on what the cost is going to be.
I would like, before we have the final numbers and the final language for the ballot, to have the architect, whoever we select, to run over to that fire station and be like, oh, don't forget this. This is all wrong
Right.
and this has to be
Yeah.
fixed.
And it's going to fall into this kind of cost range.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to have the architect that's doing the work saying, this is what you're envisioning. Here's the budget you should be looking at.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
yep.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, but in terms of the educational campaign that we've
Yep.
been talking about,
I'll light a fire.
that really has to start August.
Oh, I think this firm has done
I
a
mean,
lot
we
here.
need, we need to be out there in August. Means whatever pieces we're going to produce, they have to be produced next month.
And again, the old school way of educating, when you see your neighbor, stop, tell them about it. I mean, that works the best because the word of mouth starts to spread. But again, that would help too. If you see people in your building, take a minute. If you see them walking down the street on the sidewalks.
Oh, we do
I
a
agree.
monthly newsletter in our building and I've already written it up twice. But that's easy because it's our buildings, it's your neighborhood. So I'm sure everybody in your neighborhood knows about it, but so we just covered 1% of the population. Yeah, so we'll have to take care of it. And we will. Okay, anything else? We good to go? Okay, 4:25, we will adjourn. Thank